So I'll call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock for the select board. Also need to call it order, Rob.
Yep. We are with 5, Ross being remote. He's gonna text me if he gets ignored when he puts his hand up. And, so we're all set, we're in order.
Okay. I would like to take one item out of order. We have somebody here for an appointment as an associate member of the Open Space Committee. This should be a very quick item, and I don't want them to have to sit through the whole thing. I'm sorry, Rob. Can you forgive me? Okay. Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself or tell us why you're interested in the Open Space Committee?
Sure. So should I stand?
Yep, that's fine. Yeah.
So I'm a West Newbury resident. My name is Kathy McGilvery. I've been in town for about 7 years. And I just graduated law school recently, so I have more time on my hands, and I'm very interested in the inner workings of the town and learning more about that. I think preserving open space is important, and in meeting homeowners' expectations in the town, as well as living in a green community. I know West Newbury is just lovely with recreational activities, biking, walking, and it's very important to people, and to continue with working towards the goals of open space and the committee itself. And the inner workings of a town really interests me, and I think I'd be a very viable asset to the committee.
Sounds great. So you're aware the associate position is reappointed annually. So
Yeah.
you would be appointed to the beginning of the next fiscal year. And then it could be reappointed after that if you so choose and the board wish to. Either of you, any questions?
I just would note that, and you could also, if a full position opens up at some point, then you could always potentially be appointed to that position. But I have no other questions.
Would you like to make a motion?
Sure, I make a motion that we appoint Captain McElroy to the associate position on the Open Space Committee.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye. Thank you. Great, thanks.
So you should stop by the town clerk's office and who will swear you in and get you set up to
Okay.
do ethics training, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Ethics
all
and
right.
open meeting law. Yeah.
All right, thank
Well,
you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
I guess I bypassed the announcements. So there's a call for volunteers on the Affordable Housing Trust, Finance Committee, and potentially the Conservation Commission.
But not open space.
We'll take what we can get. All right, so now we will convene the joint session with the Finance Committee, closing special town meeting warrant. Rob, anything you want to say?
No, I think we should get to it.
All right,
I mean, I'm sure everybody's read everything that's come out recently, so we're good to go.
all right.
Thank you.
So shall we go in order? I would prefer to do that and jump around.
Sure.
That's okay. All right, so the first item is the bylaw to authorize the tax title payment agreements. Did you all see the actual bylaw language that came out today?
Yeah. Very clear.
Any questions or from the select board? Concerns?
Well, it could make.
You want to make a motion?
Make a motion to accept the tax title payments bylaw as presented. Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
Reminding Jim, who's serving as our parliamentarian,
Yes, I make a motion to approve the bylaw to authorize the tax title payment agreement as presented.
is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Then we'll take a vote. Ross, will have to vote by voice. So roll call, for Ross only. All in favor? Ross, how do you vote?
Ross is in favor.
So it's unanimous, 5-0.
Right.
So two other things, one is, do we need a sunset date on this, or is that
No,
applicable, right?
no, I have not applicable to the bylaws, yep.
Okay. And then, rationale, like who in the FinCom is gonna write the rationale?
I'll write the rationale on that one.
All right. Item,
I'll get a volunteer for easy ones.
how about the next one? FinCom quorum
FinCom
by
quorum,
off amendment.
right,
Do either of you have any comments or questions on this?
Yeah, disappointed last time that there was resistance to it. I think it's critical that they can modify this so that they can have a form of meetings. It's reasonable and logical.
So the change was to put a limit on it of 3.
so what I did was, just by way of explanation, what you're looking at, you can see last year's, last spring's markup in blue, and then, what Jim did was he took my additional language, but no less than 3, in green. So the only change from what we presented last spring is in the, but no less than 3. If I could comment briefly on that. Okay, so, there's a lot of boards that conduct business with a quorum of 2, meaning a majority of the 3 that are elected or appointed. We have the odd circumstances of allowing the 6 members to be appointed, and then they set the quorum to be this absolutely, absolute figure of 4, no matter what, and we've actually been as low as 4 in the past 12 months. Another thing to note is, in making quorum now, you can make quorum by having remote people, but that may not always stick, that could change. So the rationale here is the 4 is problematic, and it need not exist because the state allows for you to make it contingent upon however many are then serving. So that's where the original idea was. I put no less than 3 because there seemed to be some concern that this might lead to a lower number of FinCom members. I heard the number being, this means that it could go to 1. Of course, the FinCom doesn't appoint its own members, it's up to the select board to keep us staffed. And it's done a very good job over the years. So, 3 is more typical of 5. The only thing I would point out is that there are things that boards have to do, in other words, certain things are required of boards. We have to present to the town meeting the budget to vote on. We have to sit with the select board as it relates to reserve fund transfers. We have to sit with the select board, town manager, and accountant on line item transfers, which happens in a week in July. My point being that, as originally written, I did it that way on purpose, so that if, for instance, you only had 3 members then serving, and it turned out to be things had to be moved forward, we'd be able to do it with 2. But I've withdrawn that because there was this fear that if the FinCom goes to too little, it would somehow be inappropriate. So that's why I've left it at less than 3. We'll struggle with that. And I suspect it'll work out fine in the next 100 years as well.
So any further consideration of making 5 the appointed number instead of 6?
I found this thing, I talked to these guys. I mean,
I just feel like an even number is unwieldy.
it is,
Yeah.
it's stupid, but, this is what we have. I mean, I would not mind going to 5, but we haven't discussed it as a board.
If we're gonna make an amendment to the bylaw, it just seems like we should, take care of everything.
Yeah, right, sure.
Do you want to take a minute, discuss it on the board, if you would accept that as a friendly, amendment to your article?
And then we would just slightly change this language to make it, clear that a majority is, quorum is 3.
Yeah.
Just like they originally made it 4, so we're reading it. 3. Keeping in mind that Ross is remote, you might have an idea as it relates to this. I mean, I think it should be 5, but I don't know why 6 was chosen. I think, we've seen that 5, 6 is harder to stick.
Bad math.
Bad math. Bad math.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking a vote, it is better to have a bad number of
Right.
FinCom members, I think.
So basically what Wendy is asking us to consider is if the five of us here, including Ross. Ross, you there? Okay.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, are you following the conversation?
Yes, I am trying to put down a cranky baby, but I am listening.
I appreciate that. It just happens right now. We've been asked a specific question. Should we wait for the baby to go down or?
I mean, that would probably be, helpful, yeah, but I don't know if that's an
Okay.
option.
Well, unless you had a 1 second answer to whether going to 5 is okay.
This is
No.
going from 6 to 5 on appointed members or on a quorum?
No, appointed.
Oh, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Put the baby down. So, we have Ross's.
Yeah.
Yes to that. So we would just, okay, so what we're gonna take up will be slightly changed. Jim's available, well, I can do it, I guess. I just prefer it. Is Jim gonna be available to help me work through this?
Well, it's just changing 6 to 5.
Okay, and then changing language down below, but
Yeah.
no less than 3. So we'll establish a form of 3. 5 is the number. So you guys wanna take up that and then we'll.
Yes.
Okay.
That's very good, we got a year's worth of work done.
I know.
Like 3 minutes.
Any further discussion? No, can we make a motion?
Yeah, I make a
please?
motion that we, that the, membership, of the finance committee be reduced from 6 to 5 members, and that a quorum be reduced from 4 to 3.
Can I, before we even second it, make the motion different, because I think you want to mirror the document.
Okay, sure.
I'll make a motion that we accept the bylaw for the finance committee with the one as presented, with the one modification, changing the membership to 6 qualified voters, from 6 to 5 qualified voters. Because they corrected other wording in there, like select, and select,
Yeah,
just
So great, yeah, no, good, yeah, recall.
All right, so you want second instead?
Yeah.
All right, all in favor?
I'll second my modified motion.
All right, aye.
Aye.
Right, okay, all right. What do you-
And so now we're gonna take this up, and hopefully Ross is available, but if not, we still have. So we still have a quorum and we still perhaps have enough support, so, is there a motion?
I have to make a motion to accept the bylaw, as written, the bylaw amendments as written with the friendly amendment of the changing the membership, of the FinCom from 6 to 5.
Is there a second? There is a second by Dennis, it's by Dennis seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
I am in
Ross,
favor,
thank you.
yes.
And I heard no baby, that's good news, okay.
She's listening intently.
Oh, I am sure.
somebody.
She'll be our sixth member soon.
Then have her wake Chris up, please.
She'll be our 6th member soon.
Thank you very much.
She's
All right, so who's writing it?
I'm ready.
All right,
By no sunset, obviously.
Correct.
all right. Article 3 is the right to farm bylaw. I did not hear back. Catherine, who's representing them, I had suggested to her that they hold off because of the number of concerns and issues that haven't been resolved. Most notably that this does not only apply to commercial farming, it applies to every resident that wants to engage in farming activities. I told her we would be deciding tonight, perhaps we would take it off the warrant if members weren't happy with the proposal as is, and I did not hear back. And there's nobody else on Zoom, right, Angus?
No, just
Just what's
Lucy.
shown.
Yeah.
That was my thought too, is my bigger concern is they really never had any public forums and hearings and things like that, so they dropped this on town meetings. Now, with that said, the revised one they presented to us is much better presentation than the previous one.
It took out the fine.
And I get closer to support, but still some changes, which I think they can clear up with some public hearings, so I would make the motion to remove the right to farm bylaw from the fall town warrant.
I'll second that.
Okay. On further discussion, I did, follow up on a lack of public input, and she noted that it's been on Facebook and received positive response, and I said that does not generally constitute, public involvement, and we would be looking for like workshops with people that are in favor as well as people that are not, so we can get some good feedback. So, hopefully they'll follow through on that and we can consider in the spring.
But in the same regard, let her know that I appreciate significant modifications they made. I think they made huge progress.
Yeah.
Just since the last meeting.
Mhm. All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, Article 4.
And did the FinCom decide they were not going to weigh in on that? Because that was a question.
No, it's off of the warrant, so we don't.
Oh, that's right. Never mind.
It's off the warrant, so we don't take it up.
Article 4, CPA funding for the open space and recreation plan update. Thanks, Barry. So we. How do we make this?
So the
Oh, we
FinCom had
voted.
voted, the select board had voted to put it on the warrant, but hadn't voted a recommendation.
Did we vote to approve it pending receipt of the other materials? And approval by the CPC? Does that sound right?
It does.
We can make.
Yeah, we have FinCom.
But this-
I had a FinCom voted 5-0 for
Yeah.
this.
FinCom voted this one, yeah.
But the select board did not?
I don't.
Okay, all
I
right.
think Angus might be correct.
I thought we had in my head too, but I don't know. So I make a motion to approve the CPA funding for the sum of $25,000 for the open space and recreation. Fund.
Your notes have that?
No, that's my motion now.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Okay, all right.
Make it real clear. Do it.
That way we don't have to worry about whether we,
Yeah,
what we did or
yeah,
didn't do.
Just,
Second.
okay, in terms of process, could you make that contingent on approval by the CPC at the meeting next week? Because, I mean, that is.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment. Thank you.
All right.
I'll second that.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, burning through these. Okay, number 5, CPA funding for trail markers in Mill Pond. That,
This one was already acted by both,
okay,
so this is all
and
set.
was that contingent on CPC approval as well?
I don't recall that it was.
I think that's important.
Yeah, I think it is too. I was actually surprised that people voted on it without
Yeah.
the
I-
application ever come in.
Yeah, so the funding application is substantially complete, it's due tomorrow and will be considered next week, so. Would you be amenable to making a new motion? Chris, or Rick?
Make a motion to reconsider the previous vote for the funding for the Mill Pond signs for $4,500 to be contingent on CPC approval.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
FinCom, do you feel the need to revote or not?
I don't,
All right,
I don't.
Article 6, Break Hill Water Tank repairs, that's there's been a request to remove that, so do we have to vote to take it off the warrant because it's.
You do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I move that we remove the request for funds to repair the Break Hill water tank from the, first time we warrant.
Before a second, can I ask why?
There's a couple of, I could go on and on, but basically there's still a lack of certainty as to what, so they have gotten it in writing from CB&I that anything that they repaired previously, they will come and repair at no cost. They've said if while they're in there doing repairs, if they see other things that need repair, that's gonna be at cost, but they will not provide, they haven't at least yet provided any kind of estimate of that. So the other variable, this had initially been penciled in for CB&I to actually come and do the work in early October. But come to find out, that's the 2 weeks that Groveland is gonna be doing is flushing of hydrants. Therefore, the water source to refill the tank isn't available. That pushed it into November. Mark feels, and I totally agree with him, they don't want to do it in November because that's part of why they got into this mess in the first place. So it's probably not going to be repaired till spring. The out-of-pocket costs, just like the article request form said, are probably going to be a fairly small amount. And if it's anything other than a small amount, I'm pushing the water department, we need to file with insurance. So at that point, the only exposure would be the deductible plus anything insurance might not cover, such as, I don't know if they would cover refilling the water. So I think in all likelihood, the costs are gonna be well under what was in that article and probably well within, what can be covered within the, water department's extraordinary unforeseen. line.
You have the ability to have more ducks in a row come spring. But more things will be known, like what you just outlined.
Yeah.
So, and there's no problem with delaying it.
Right.
Second the motion.
All in favor? The Article 7, Middle Street Bridge. Are we gonna defer that until next week, until the bids are in?
I think that's smart, yeah. So, but is it set that your board is meeting next week or is that
I
not?
assumed we had to.
We're definitely meeting.
You're
As a
definitely meeting
FinCom
next
on
Wednesday, yeah.
Wednesday.
Right.
On Wednesday, it's our turn to host.
We can't vote on this article now. without-
Right,
Right.
so I think. There could be other things that come up for next week too, so I
Right.
think you should be checking your availability as well.
Yeah, and if you don't meet next week, your next regular meeting, as you know, would be the 10th. That would be the night you would normally,
Right.
assign a warrant. So you could vote a recommendation the 10th. During next week would
I
be,
won't be here till the 10th. I'm gone.
you're out next week,
So,
right, got it.
Welcome to me without.
Okay.
What's a quorum for you
Three.
guys? So. Four.
It works.
So
So potentially we could just wait and vote.
potentially you could, or if something else comes up, or there's another fly in the ointment, then join us.
That was the second that you're meeting, right?
The Wednesday, yeah.
Okay.
I know days or weeks, but the numbers are.
Yeah, Wednesday, okay.
Wednesday, yeah.
But it would be perfectly appropriate for us as a FinCom to vote our recommendation and then the select board would vote separately.
Oh, yeah.
That's how
Yeah.
we used to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's conceivable that I would be remote. But
But if it's just this one thing.
Right, but I would be remote, I would attend, it just, and if I absolutely had to be here, I would
All
definitely.
right, so if it's just this one item, we can wait till the 10th, but.
Yeah, but if something else comes up, you might want to join us, yeah.
Okay, good. Article 8, Page Pipe Stave Crosswalk. I don't recall how we left this. You provided some follow-up information.
Just 100% design plans.
Yeah.
The other thing that, I would consider, new information is I did send out, just last night, I understand people might not have looked at it, but the draft article language, you may have noticed that there's language in the draft article for this item, regarding the, right of way. And, so it's no longer, it's not just a funding, request at this point, it's also got language. See if the town will authorize the select board to donate by gift, purchase, eminent domain or otherwise. Basically a portion of the right of way on the paid school to Mass DOT. So I think that shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but it's in the language, for the draft article.
One of the things you were gonna follow up on is the weather, management.
Right,
we need from the town.
And I had sent a note on that the budget that, TEC had provided had carried an amount for that they confirmed they thought would be enough. And that, they didn't expect that given the scale of the project, that DOT would have like full-time inspection, but that they would, since it's their road, they would, also have an ear to the ground.
Mhm.
Did TEC provide any estimate of how long they thought it would take?
I didn't ask.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be one,
Yeah, it'd be one construction, yeah, I mean, it would probably be,
fairly quick if they,
It's contract this summer, right?
Yeah, it would, I would think we definitely want to get it done outside of, school.
I mean, it's not really a huge project.
No, it's really not.
So that's why I'm just wondering, is it 2 weeks or is it a month, but obviously we don't know.
probably closer to a month. I mean, there's, some drainage work and, constructing the sidewalk.
15 doesn't even work, it's a month.
DOT's not doing the work, a private contractor with a profit motive is doing the work, so,
Yeah, well, I mean.
but it probably is.
The projects are always funded.
As long as they're, on site doing the work and then leave, if other things going on, that's never. It's pretty straightforward.
And we feel like going ahead with this one part of the corridor study makes sense. You know,
Yeah, absolutely,
okay.
absolutely.
Well,
Casey's,
Casey's
raising
got
a-
a question.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Because this article contains two separate actions, and if the town were to vote not to authorize the select board to donate the land, I don't know, would it be possible to do the crosswalk without that donation?
no, it would not.
All right, so this article contains too many different things. We could split the article and divide the article and take up the two different issues separately, or you could choose to put two articles.
Okay, so,
You can't make a contingent on the funding to grant the right of way,
Yeah, you can do that too if you want to, but then,
simple. Just reword the article to say, can right of way granted to the state contingent on town meeting approving the funding.
yeah, I mean, Tim is, our legal counsel's in the process of reviewing this, so I think that issue probably would come up. So he gets back to us. Are we comfortable voting on the article?
the
That is
concept,
knowing that the language.
the concept, yeah, I mean, we're always open to things being done in a little different manner after, Casey or town council, makes their recommendations, so. The concept is fairly clear, I have a question, one question on this I think might come up. Which is, and I think the corridor study is great, and I think we're gonna, go forward with a whole bunch of improvements in town that people will like. Does this thing remain as useful if we were to build a new elementary school elsewhere and the building perhaps goes off to be, some sort of facility for either housing or extended care facilities, which we discussed on the planning board years ago, some of you might remember. So I think the next likely use of Page School would be way less intense and would be more typical and ordinary. As it's now constituted, I think there's a lot of parking down there, but I guess what I'm asking is it conceivable that the parking would be retained by us for the use across the street at Pipe State if we moved away from Page School?
That's 10 years down the road, probably on a quick schedule.
Yeah.
So to ignore this problem for 10 years is not wise, number one. Number two, if the town decides to dispose of Page School, you can do whatever you want with the parking.
Right,
That's
exactly.
a discussion for them, so.
Well, it's a discussion for them, but my guess is it's gonna be a question when we go. to-
Right, but I don't think you turn a blind eye knowing you've got a situation that could be correct.
Let me rephrase what I'm saying. It would be very provident if we kept in the back of our minds that if we did something different with Page School, that we would retain the parking, that's all. And I'm just expecting some sort of question related to this to come up with that. So sometimes it's good to
That's it before.
discuss it beforehand. Thank you.
Motion?
No, I didn't.
I mean, I could offer my opinion, everyone's got opinions, mine's not worth any more than anything else, but it is something we've talked about a bit
Yes,
with the
I'm
with
sure.
the staff, department heads, and our thought is that the primary users of this crosswalk really aren't students.
No.
It's to connect the two, the two of the largest, town open spaces and the trails networks, and so we think that there would continue to be really comparable value of this crossing, whether that's a school or something else. But to your point, Rob, as I think everyone knows, there are kind of fairly absolute constraints on the amount of parking at Pipe Save because of the conservation restriction, the inability to pave. So unless the town makes some future decision, for instance, to establish new parking on the Dunn property, you have what you have. So one of the things we have tried over the years to encourage youth sports and users of Pipe State to use the parking at
Yeah.
Pipe State will not do it, partly because they don't feel safe doing it on those rare occasions when it has been done. We've had a police detail officer to facilitate crossing. So I do think that, you know, I think people like parking right next to their destination, not across the street, but at least if it's safe to cross, I think it does
Right.
open up that parking to, make, better use.
I think
for Pipe State.
that parking, let me rephrase what I was asking. I think that parking is integral to the use of Pipe State.
I agree with you.
And so what I was really getting at was kind of, you know, I apologize for doing it obliquely, but to my mind, we've got to have a corporate memory. Because we've had some transfers in town that turned out to be dumb from our standpoint, and I think we need a corporate memory that that parking is about Pipe State, not necessarily about that building. That's all I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Make a motion to approve Article 8 of the pipe and the page of Pipe State crosswalk improvement for the sum of $366,000 pending clarification from town council concerning granting a right of way to the state only after town meeting funds of $366,000.
Further discussion?
Yeah, we talked about it at the last meeting. It's a lot of money, so I'm supporting it to put it to the residents of the town, see if they want to spend the money. I'm not saying this is a great value, but I think it's definitely worth their consideration.
Before you vote during discussion, we did get, we have been in touch with Representative Ramos' office last spring regarding, you know, they have contacted us every year on what are projects that can potentially help with. And anyhow, long story short, Rep Ramos did include a request for a budget earmark to support this project. I was in touch with her office again, you know, in the last couple of weeks to see what became of that. It's part of an economic development bill that has not yet been acted on by the legislature. But at least if that bill is passed and if it includes an earmark, whether that's 25,000 or 100,000, it could bring this number down. So there's nothing to change the number tonight, but you know, that sure would be nice. And you know, we're staying on that. Not that we can really influence that, but certainly if that earmark is approved by the legislature before town meeting, it would directly reduce what we'd be asking for local costs.
Nice.
Fingers crossed.
And then,
All right, all in favor?
Okay, before we take a motion, any more questions or we'll have discussion afterwards, but just.
yeah, it's good. I have one that's kind of, it's been sitting in the back of my mind, really, since I read the materials the very first time. And that's that, I know part of this was to have equestrians cross the street safely. And I just, for whatever reason, I don't own a horse, but I have a hard time kind of imagining it, like a horse with a rider crossing Main Street from one, they do it now. Okay, yeah. And how are they gonna press a button and how are they
So
gonna
the
get?
buttons are actually
The buttons are
higher.
gonna be higher, so
Oh, okay.
there's gonna be
Well,
two buttons, one at the pedestrian level, one at
Mr. Red. All right.
So, one other question here.
But that's not the primary use of that crosswalk, right?
No, not the primary, but that was part of it. Just
It's the one that stuck in his brain.
Well, and it did lead to very tangible changes in the design, both the striping of the crosswalk, the two-tier button, the gravel shoulder
Yeah.
headed east rather than just the sidewalk headed west. So it did, you know.
Yeah, but,
Yeah.
It's just scary, but I think it happens now. You.
without the light.
So, my question is, did the CIC review and approve this?
They reviewed it at their initial meeting. They have a second meeting coming up on Tuesday night, so they have not voted their recommendations yet.
yeah, but we're going ahead and voting anyways. Okay.
So I just had a question about, I've heard some discussion about the 113 master plan for these corner, the corridor. How does this fit into that? Is there, with the master plan, it's a state road, right? There would never be any mandatory, funding or anything like that to get any of this done? This would all have to be done by the town?
Not all of it. So I'm pulling up the project page on the corridor master plan. So early in the scoping, before we engage the consultant, I'm gonna do a new share so that those on Zoom can see as well. Just bear with me. We had identified 5 different nodes, 5 different crossings that were of particular interest. We have since added a 6th. So those 5 are the middle high school crossing with Nix, the town center, Elwell Square, this building and down to Bachelor Street is kind of a node, the library and town hall, and the Page Pipe Stave. So those were the 5 we identified. Since that time, we have added to the study the Ocean Meadow way to the river, because there's trail connections there without a sanctioned crossing, and that's a safety concern. So the study it's a corridor study, so it's covering the entire 5 miles, but the end product is going to be conceptual planning only, not engineering planning. So to get to something that would be eligible for state or federal funding, and most state infrastructure or transportation projects that are funded by the state is actually federal money that they're allocating. So it all goes through this TIP process, Transportation Improvement Program. It's a 5-year planning process that's updated on a rolling basis. So it's always looking ahead 5 years, and they update that every year with a lot of public comment. Right now, and going back many years, West Newbury has not had a project on the TIP. West Newbury has not had a project that the state would consider a project. This is the first time that we've had something that reaches that, because you have to be at 25% design and have good, credible cost estimates for the state to even consider it. You can't go in there with a wish list. That's not going to be eligible. It's not eligible, A, and B, it's not competitive, because within the region, you're competing against all of the other cities and towns, many of which have quite extensive infrastructure needs. So a big part of why this corridor study was initiated was specifically to position the town to be competitive in future for state and federal money. We've been very, very clear from the start that doesn't happen in 1 or 2 years. That takes years. You need a concept plan, and then each of these would need to be advanced to, similar to this one, to 25% design. Then you get the feedback from DOT. Then you go to the 75-100% where we are with the Page Pipe Stave. So we recently, or over the summer, a couple of months ago, we signed a contract for the middle high school crossing. So that one is now going through a conceptual design. So that's kind of, getting some specific design attention in addition to the corridor as a whole. So all of this is to make the town eligible for state and federal funding. But given the extent of improvements that we think are going to be needed, some number of those are going to need to be funded locally, just based on the mismatch between the regional needs and the amount of money. So whether this is the one people want to put the local money toward, we would find out at town meeting. But there's no way that the state and feds are going to come in and do all this. So we're going to have to.
Right, and we'll be able to learn, for instance, what they might be most receptive to. For instance, the town center might strike them as something that is the one that they would want to participate in. So, we might have to chip away from either side to the point where you get some traction with it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the one by the school, right?
Yeah, I think the middle high school we had our kickoff site visit on that one, actually just, I guess on Monday of this week. And that, I think once that gets to the design stage, I think it's going to be a really exciting funding opportunity, because it is, when you're out there walking, it's very clear, like it needs to be improved. it could be much safer, and that's the
Right, it
objective.
involves school kids, so.
Yeah.
But they are likely not gonna cost as much as this one because of the walkway that we have to build, right?
Absolutely, it's gonna cost that much or more, because
Right.
yeah, it's part of what's driving the cost on this one is the state won't allow you to have just a landing pad. It has to connect. So that's where, this from here all the way up to here, this is an explicit requirement of DOT. This was not something we proposed, but that's the creation of a new sidewalk. That's creating the need for the right-of-way adjustment. That's gonna narrow the width of this driveway.
And the other side is complicated too. isn't
The
it?
other side, exactly, yeah, because, so if you look at the middle high school, on the, north side, that's a curb, that's a granite curb, so there's gonna need to be a handicap accessible landing area, and then a sidewalk that's gonna need to go all the way along that frontage to tie into the existing sidewalk network. If that's the concept plan that's chosen, which we're not there yet, but yeah, there's a lot, and that's what these things just, that they turn into bigger projects than you initially envisioned. But it was kind of predictable that would happen.
But Dennis is raising the issue of just a little bit about the long range planning that we have to collect in order to know how we can fit this stuff in. So, in a way, you're raising issues of how much expenditures can we make for this type of project? The answer to that becomes no, when we start fleshing out our long range forecast.
But back to Chris's comment about, hey, this is a lot of money, but when you look at everything that's involved there, it really isn't a lot of money when you think about it. I mean, it's.
And there
A
were
lot of-
several different concepts that were
Yeah,
proposed. and
that's right.
evaluated.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's not just a crosswalk.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just a light and.
Yeah, I mean, originally, when we started talking about it, it was just a crosswalk.
Right.
We originally envisioned this fairly simple thing that worked. But, on the other projects, who knows how much, what they would end up costing. We talked about this earlier, in another meeting that, essentially the TIP funds, there's so much competition within our region that, and we're a small community and, hard to say whose need and whose risk is greatest, but, chances are we'll effectively, or we might end up benefiting from crumbs. So if there are big projects and there's a certain amount of TIP funds available, and after it's allocated to major projects, there's a little bit left, that might be where we end up.
Yeah,
At some point in the future, where we end up.
and there have been times when money's been available and projects haven't been available. And then you go search, I was sitting on, Merrimack, searching for projects. So having a project ready to go is, like Rick just said, it can be very often significant.
What is the green shading there? Is signifying, Angus, like the fluorescent?
I think that's just indicating some grading work and reseeding, loam and seed, but it looks to me that those are all areas that would be some amount of grading.
And on the south side there, Angus, if you scroll back up, just to the little profile there, you can see they have to do a little bit of work there to kind of catch the grade, because it
Right.
goes way down,
Right.
so, and that's what in guardrail.
Right. Okay, so do we have a motion?
Where were we?
Let's just get going.
Yeah, it is.
It falls in that.
Okay, so, okay, I'll make a motion to, approve the expenditure of $366,000 for a Page High School crosswalk. And try to use the same language as Chris. Contingent upon the approval of the money, then there'll be a second vote on, the donation of the land. Did I get that right? Not exactly, well, go ahead. Chris, what do you say?
Can't you just move the same motion? Same motion.
Okay, I make a motion to mirror Chris Wild's motion.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? So, Ross, you around?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna hold a vote, correct? So all in favor? Ross, how do you vote?
I'll vote in favor.
So it's 5-0 unanimous in favor. Who's gonna write this? All right, Dan is gonna write it.
No, I was gonna volunteer.
Dennis lives close, so let him write it.
Yeah, this is your neighbor.
Yeah, you're the neighbor.
And
Dennis
we need
is
a
gonna write
sun,
it.
we need a sunset as well.
We do.
And what's this gonna be, 2 years out?
Let's see, I think let me see what I put in the request. Yeah, June 30, 2026. So,
Very good.
Yeah.
Sound good?
You think that's doable? You?
yeah, our intent, if the funding's approved in October, our intent would actually be to put it out to bid this winter.
Okay.
And try to hit next construction season. So even if that doesn't happen, we still have,
Right.
yeah, I mean, I
You
guess,
Fall, right.
yeah.
And then the other thing we always talk about is funding source, so what the funding source? on this?
So I have it on my spreadsheet, penciled in for, stabilization. I think that's the logical source. So that's, you know,
Yeah, that's what the proposal was.
yeah,
That's what's in front of us. The stabilization, general stabilization fund. Correct?
yes,
Right,
yeah.
because we haven't made any, transfers into the capital yet. Okay, great. So does that answer everything on that? We're done with that?
Article 9 is to rescind authorized and unissued.
And I think you both
We did that?
already voted that one.
Yeah, that's done.
All right, Article 10, River Road Resiliency Planning, matching
Okay.
funds for the MVP grant. So I have some concerns about this. I guess the fact that the scope is not defined yet, and I understand everything's in flux. I'm not comfortable putting that in front of the voters without having a defined scope. I'm also concerned that the fact that this, this grant program to some extent is driving the scope and the schedule. And that feels tenuous to me, especially given what happened the last time around. We ended up with a 9-month schedule.
I think the 9-month schedule, 9 or 10 months last time around was, I think, the program, the MVP program has realized the error in that.
Of their ways.
Of their ways.
Yeah.
There was, we did get a comment, at some point, and I don't recall how it was phrased, maybe Christine remembered better,
I
but
think it was actually in the next year's RFR. In the language saying they would, their goal was to approve as many 2-year projects as possible.
that, they realized that they created a monster when they only allowed 9 months. So a little over 9 months.
Yeah, I guess the other thing that troubles me is that this is 600,000 or 500,000 for a study. It's not like the crosswalk, we're actually doing something. And I understand this is the MVP process, but it seems like the town as a whole should decide or understand that this $500,000 is gonna lead then to a design and then to construction. And what is that gonna cost? I mean, if we're doing this, we should be committed to all in. And we really don't know what that number is.
We should be committed all into construction.
To doing something. I mean, otherwise we're gonna spend $1 million on studies and have nothing to show for it. So,
Okay, I think that's the cost of making a good decision is doing the foundational work. And, this foundational work includes a certain amount of, site survey work. Defining what you really have, on the ground, with, sort of verifiable survey and some degree of, I'm not sure how, obviously there's still stuff in flux, or things in flux, but, some degree of, wetlands delineation. I mean, there are a bunch of different components in it.
Right, again, but what I'm trying to express is that typically if you want to build a new school, it's gonna be 10 million. People buy into that general concept, and then it makes sense to do this study, this design, and so forth. But right now, we have no idea where this is leading, and it's not, we don't have a comprehensive plan. This is not even on the select board's work plan, because it all happened so recently. It feels very rushed, and those are my concerns.
You said don't even have an idea of the cost, the meeting, I think it was a week ago, not even last year. Rick stated this will be the biggest project ever in town, that's a frightening thought.
Is that crazy?
We'll have to ask Matt.
Pretty close, because you said it'd be more than the page school at 108 million, so I said, I responded, if that's 108 million, I'm moving out of town before the tax bill hits.
Well, something like that was said. So,
Because I don't think it was close to that verbatim.
Well,
So,
either way, well,
okay, we'll look at the recording, but.
the concept is, if it's that big of a number, I think we need a better grasp on the number. At this point, that'd be my first concept. I mean, if it's 50 million, that's one number, still a big number. 100 million is a whole different number. Then the next question and concern is when he said, if it's not on the work plan, we're doing exactly what we did not want to do with town staff, which is to throw more stuff at them when they already have a lot already on the plate and plans. I think that needs to be considered. And then my third concern is, are you just, not you, but are we as a town just chasing grant money and then trying to fill the void? So I don't have answers to any of it.
So, is Christine, that's it. Oh, I don't know, what you want to recognize.
Did you know something?
No, I'm just wondering if at this point, we can also participate. I mean, I'm glad to let Chris, I'd like Christine to go ahead, but, I think
Yeah, this is
while you're
a
having,
discussion.
right, while you're having discussion, myself, I have some thoughts on some of the stuff that's been said.
Christine or Butch or Caitlin, any of you are welcome to pipe in.
Yeah, I completely understand the concerns. It is a large project and it's hard to, when we're with the CCRC, hard to say, okay, we're gonna take this piece of the road and do this small project, or we're gonna take this piece of the road and do this small project. There's two things with this grant. One, it sounds like we may have a very good chance at it. We did meet with Michelle Rowden since you met last. So that's one thing, but I think the goal is after the first year, we would go for a 2-year project. If they said we want to have it done in 1 year, we'd say, okay, then we're only gonna stop where we would have stopped. But the goal for the first year would be an alternatives analysis, so that the town and all the officials know what the options are, and within that alternatives analysis, there would be costs. So this would get you to that point of what's our master plan. And then the second piece of it is doing some of that base mapping, some of the survey delineation. Michelle Rowden was very adamant about doing the delineation early, because you have to start some of these conversations with the permitting agencies early. So with this grant, if we can get that base mapping information, that in itself is of great value to the town, like incredible value, because then at the end of this project, if you don't want to do, a big, raising the road or doing, you still have all that survey data, you've got your delineation, geotech might be part of it. So you could do smaller projects or more repairs, because no matter what happens, the road is gonna need to be fixed at some point. In certain areas, we know it's very close. But to have a project, you're gonna need all that information. So, whether you wanna commit to it, a 2-year project, it is a lot of money. It's 2.5 miles long. Roadway projects are very expensive, even just the data collection. I think this would get us to a good place of starting to make those decisions.
Do
If
we
that
know
makes
the
sense.
hotspots though? That's not the right word, but we know that like the areas of most concern, could we focus on those instead of doing the whole?
Well, and this is what we did. We took the recommendations that they had. So some areas are shoreline erosion or shoreline stabilization. And then some areas are flooding areas, and then some areas are both.
Mhm.
So then if you end up looking at kind of like your study area, it's almost the entire road, except that it has one of those or not, except for the higher elevation at the beginning there. So that's where we're getting tripped up at the CCRC. We wanted to define a spot. And actually, I mean, you could say, okay, let's look at the flooding area on either end. You wouldn't want to do just one, because your road is still gonna be closed on the other side. So you could do that, but then you're missing the shoreline part, and that's the real immediate concern, actually, is the shoreline issue, in my opinion.
So I'm, this is $60,000, correct?
Yeah, so I just wanna
So-
say, it's 60,000, but if it's a $600,000 project, that's an enormous amount of staff time that goes into that. So I think it's misleading to just look at the ask financially.
So my point of view is pretty much like Rick's, and I think Christine's, that without this work being done, we're not gonna have enough knowledge about what we're dealing with to speak to it. Already we're talking about piecemealing it, and I would be very uncomfortable piecemealing this question. I think that becomes the master plan for the road.
Correct.
And I'm sorry, I know everybody's under stress and strain, but this is a profoundly important question that we need more understanding of. And it ain't gonna be as simple as finding out where the hot spots are now, because those are the hot spots now, but some of those are caused by things that are not hot spots, and this stuff is spilling out all over, and so as far as cost goes, fine, if you wanna talk about staff, yeah, that's something I can't comment on, but I think this work needs to be done, I think it's imperative to get this done.
And so Robin, how do you feel like this compares to all the other, like, Eagle Street Bridge?
I think this is one of the most profoundly, we could make do with Page School.
You think this would be a higher
I
priority?
think this is gonna be a higher priority throughout the whole country, and
Yeah,
I'm hopeful that this is the only place we deal with it. But the stuff is more profound than I think we yet know.
Yeah, but I mean, if we were to lose the road, then essentially we lose, 40 houses or access to 40 houses, which is the equivalent of losing 40 houses. That would have, very repercussions.
So Ross would also like to speak.
Hey, everybody.
No, he texted me, remember I said this.
Oh, did you raise your hand, Ron, so we can see?
Yeah, I couldn't find that button on my phone, so.
Okay,
I did ask him, just.
okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Right.
Ross, go ahead.
So, Wendy, the way that the concerns that you expressed made me think about something that we've talked about in the past, and I don't know if that was your intent or if that's just what I took from it, but I think that there's been situations in the past where we kind of tiptoe into very expensive investments, and every year you throw 50 or 100 at it, and you get to the point where you're kind of pot committed, but there's uncertainty about our ability or the town's desire to do the end goal project. And I don't know if that's exactly what you were saying, but this seems reminiscent of some of those issues where every year it's an incremental investment, but people don't necessarily understand that you're working towards a colossal investment. But I don't dispute the fact that it seems necessary and it seems like almost unavoidable. So I wonder if we can broach the two issues there by wording the article or wording the FinCom rationale to really make it clear to everybody what the scope of this article entails. kind of make it known to them how much ambiguity there is. And even though we don't have numbers for the solutions, I mean, a statement as simple as one of the biggest projects in town history would at least give people a concept of the magnitude of what they're voting on. So that's
Well,
my
we
2
could do,
cents.
we could do a synopsis for the FinCom booklet of the work done to date, the work that this would cover, and then go on to explain where it's leading to. I mean, I agree with Ross 100%. I know you're concerned. I absolutely know that at some point in time, we're gonna be discussing this larger than, more than we have been discussing it. But I look at this as a way that I could enter into a discussion. Without this stuff done, I'm afraid that we're all gonna think we know something about it, when in fact we may know less than what we think, or that we might be missing parts of it that are really important, so.
I think another one of my concerns is that, the CCRC is very energetic, and engaged, and intelligent, and they've been driving the bus on this, and the select board has had no role. I mean, I know Rick's on the committee, but there's been no engagement on the select board to see if we're on board with it, and I mean, I feel left out of, like, I don't know all the details of what's going on, so. I mean, one thought I had is, maybe we take this off the warrant now, and knowing that the funding has to be committed before March. Just have a special town meeting in February, that will give the CCRC and the select board time to engage and like kind of narrow in on the scope. I don't know if that's something that might be acceptable. And that would also allow us to maybe do a additional outreach to the public and try to let them understand the implications of this project. I mean, those public meetings that we had, the only people there, most were rural people, so I do think the rest of town needs to understand why we think it's important to spend this amount of money, on a project that really might not affect them, in a liberal sense. Tax dollars would. So that would be my suggestion as a way to try to address concerns and not lose momentum for the grant.
So I'm not gonna address that, right, at least not now, but I'd like to actually say something to Chris, about Chris's, mention of looking for some, or wishing that there was the ability to have a number, the overall cost of a potential river road solution. It's essentially impossible to do that until you have the baseline information. Because if you don't understand what your alternatives is, you certainly can't estimate the cost of those alternatives.
Yes, I again, am agreeing with Rick. I think it would be really, really hard to have a public discussion when we have gone far enough to define exactly what's out there and exactly what's gonna happen. I think this is cheap money to get to where we need to be to have exactly the discussion that you want one day. Again, I'm totally agreeing with you, but without this.
What do you guys think?
I have a question for Christine, Chair, 2 parts really. The first one is kind of to piggyback on what Rick said. At the end of the study, do you anticipate having a rough estimate dollar-wise of what it would cost to protect River Road?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that would be the goal, and with different scenarios.
Scenarios, right.
Different scenarios.
Correct.
Based upon all the work that gets
Right,
done.
and it would include things, I mean, slope stabilization, definitely, but also, to raise the road or move it slightly, or who knows, if there's, there's.
But
a
there will
whole-
be alternatives presented with different costs.
Absolutely,
evaluations.
absolutely, yep.
That's what that 120,000, that's the design portion then is to say, if we do this, it could lead
Right.
to these dollars and.
Right, if you're interested, I found in the Mass dot highway manual, I have a background in road design, and it dawned on me, like, this is a road design, I mean, it's a road. So looking at, roadway improvements, like the structural stability of the bed, we had a sinkhole just, a couple months ago. You have to look at the slope at the same time. You have to look at the drainage on the road at the same time, just like you do with a roadway project. So if you go into the MassDOT manual, it's for Mass Highway roads, but it's also great guidance for municipalities. And it talks about the whole process from concept to construction about what you need to do. And road design is, it's lengthy, it's expensive. But then what I came across was in the planning phase and they have what's called a detailed alternatives analysis. This kind of spells out, this is in the appendix, spells out exactly what we need. And it talks about why you do it. So a lot of big transportation projects do this. You can Google it if you're interested. You can see. So before they spend big money or make decisions on, can the state pay for it, funds, et cetera. This is what they do and it's all spelled out.
They do the legwork.
Yep.
That this grant is gonna do for it.
Correct.
What was the first grant that we did? How much?
200,000, at that time, the program had a 25% match, so 50 of the
So
200.
50 plus 60 is 110,000 to get to the point that we have the knowledge that we can then have a discussion.
And then that design would solve that, so I mean, it would be years before we actually did anything.
Oh, yes. I shouldn't say absolutely. What you would have, if you do some of this base mapping, you will have the base plans, delineation. So if the town has to do an emergency fix, like on a much smaller scale, like say we have to stabilize something, you have to go through the permitting. But at least you would have everything you need to do that shorter term.
And right now, fix a segment, it would be an intelligent,
Exactly.
an informed plan.
It would go.
Why are you, why are we fixing this
Right,
segment? It's part of an overall.
Right now,
That's right.
Right, it's a little bit like a corridor plan, almost, like, you need to get your information for the whole thing, but then you're gonna have your focus areas. And just one other interesting piece, is we had a meeting Monday with, DER about the culvert that's gonna be, we call it the DER culvert, it's near 25 River Road. And that's happening, so we got the grant, but they're managing it, but they're hiring a consultant, which we're not allowed to disclose, which consulting yet, but that'll come up soon. It's gonna be pretty exciting, I think. But they are doing that little piece around the culvert, with now, I mean, before June 30th of this year. So they're kind of going to be going through that same process, at least in terms of data collection. We talked about geotech survey, coming up with feasible alternatives, so. Yeah, right there. So we'll be able to kind of watch how they do it, and then by the time April comes, I think we're gonna have a much better understanding of what might work for the whole road for the scope.
Can I ask a second part for my other question? So will the study now, the data generated, the information generated from the study, in, let's say, 10 years, when we decide to build and do something about it, secure funding and all that stuff, will that data still largely be relevant? Considering that the river is a living thing, it's fast moving, the climate's
Right,
changing,
right. Yeah, I would say, most of the survey would still be relevant. You would probably have to recheck the shoreline, things that are moving. You would have to redo the wetland delineation, after, I think it's good for 3 years, yeah. But you'd already have the original information, so going in would be so much easier.
And some parts of this won't be taken up 10 years out.
Right, and some
parts-
may never be taken up.
Some might not ever be taken up,
But you
some.
could rule
some-
it out, yeah.
Right, and you can sequence it, you can start managing it intelligently and, it's, so 10 years, that would be great if we could kick this down. We're gonna deal with stuff within 5 years, aren't we? Aren't we dealing with it right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
If you
Which is
just,
still in
Well, gee, yes, yeah.
yeah.
We still in potholes, and, the bank washouts that we're
Yeah, right.
watching it pretty closely right now.
And it has accelerated. It's not static, it's going the other way, it's
Right.
accelerating, so.
Can I offer a suggestion? Obviously Christine seems pretty enthusiastic about it. She'll be dealing with a lot of the work on the town end, so
Yeah.
you might be hanging With every grant, all all this article funds is the $60,000 for our share. Then the select board has the opportunity to, don't grants have to go by the select board for approval.
Mhm.
So my comment would be, leave it on the warrant, see what the flavor of town meeting is. And if it's really contentious and still passes, you have another opportunity to accept the grant or not.
And to go against town meeting.
They're only funded $60,000, and it becomes a select board decision to accept the grant. If there's a pretty clear direction at town meeting, I don't think you block that, but if it's, you know, passes by one vote, that might be something to consider. I mean, I generally like to defer to town meeting, they
Mhm.
almost always get it right.
So Christine, how much longer until the scope is nailed down? I mean, it's evolving daily, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not due till April, so,
That, I guess that's my concern, is having a town meeting vote on something that's not defined. You know, that's
Right.
why I'm thinking if we extended, you know, had a different town meeting just for this one. You know, it's not ideal, but at least that way we wouldn't lose momentum for the grant. Or do you think town meeting doesn't care if there's no scope?
I don't think town meetings, I mean, I think if there's a scope, it is, but it's made clear that the scope, the bottom line is not going to change, but the allocation of funds within the scope will change. I think
I
town
see you,
meeting would
Casey.
accept that.
I think we need to get the flavor of town, they could be very enthusiastic on this, I have no idea,
Mhm.
and so I think that would be helpful, so to leave it on, and then have the opportunity to do what you want.
Casey?
In terms of a town meeting, it's very important that the town understands exactly what it's voting on. And this is a case where I think there's a huge danger of not. And I have to reiterate what Rob said. This particular article does not really address building projects or anything else. This is a scope of possibilities kind of thing. You study the problem of River Road in its entirety, give us ideas of what might be done. In one of the meetings that I went to, I'm one of those horrible River Road people, so I guess. But in one of the meetings that I went to, we did a whole session, brainstorming session, where everybody in groups just threw out any idea they could think of what you might do about any of the problems that are on River Road. And since most of us were people who live on River Road or nearby anyway, people were very familiar with these problems. We see them daily. And people had lots and lots of ideas. Well, obviously, we can't do all of those ideas, and all of them wouldn't be good. But it was just an information collection thing. And that's what this grant to me is. See what the possibilities are. Study them carefully. Some would be ridiculous. Some would be outrageously expensive. But at least we collect the information we need to see, well, what's possible? What could we consider doing? And it's not wrapped up with a particular project that you're concerned about, because we don't have any idea yet what we can do. It would be very premature to fold a specific project into this article because it doesn't address that. It addresses a study. And, you know, we've done this in the past when we had problems with school projects and other things. I'm even playing fields. The town recognized that there were some questions that really needed to be answered. And so the vote ended up being to refer it back to the committee or whatever to do exactly this, to look at the project holistically and decide, well, what is the best option for what we can do? Not just some helter-skelter, well, let's do this, but what's the best way to address this problem? And the town has multiple times sent projects back to the drawing board because they felt that it wasn't well thought out. This is the opposite, is let's think this out and see how much it's going to cost us. And then we'll be in a really good position to come up with suggestions for what to do.
Any further
Any further discussion?
questions? No?
This is.
Right, we have a motion from the select board.
Yeah, move that we would, approve the article to allocate $60,000 as matching funds. For an MVP grant to do an alternatives analysis. For how we should address flooding issues and erosion issues and everything else related to the river's impact on the Merrimack River's impact on River Road.
I'll second the motion.
Any further discussion? I would like, not as a condition, but I really strongly feel that this board needs to be more engaged in the process, and this needs to be added to our work plan. Right now, it's not on there, and I think we have to be consistent in how we handle, requests from committees. Right now, this committee is doing whatever it wants. It's for the greater good of the town, but still we have to be consistent. So that would be my comment.
Would you, consider attending some of the meetings, can you?
Why doesn't the committee come to the select board? Every other committee comes to the select board, you know, to say, you know, is this something we can do? Are there staff resources available? You know? And I'm also concerned that the committee is directing staff. I think we need to consider that from that. So those are other issues for the select board to deal with, but they impact my feelings about the project.
I'd be happy to talk with you offline at some point. So I do think there's some improvements that could be made, so some ideas.
Okay, great. All right. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
So, do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion. So
There you go.
I move that we, consider the funding for the River Road, improvement study for the motion that Rick made on the select board.
Is there a second? We have a second from Jim. Any further discussion, or can we vote? We're gonna vote. Ross, you there?
Yes.
Thank you. We're gonna vote on this matter. All in favor? Ross, how do you vote?
I am in favor.
So it's 5-0. Who is going to write this? I'll write this. Okay? And do we need a sunset?
We would, yeah,
What?
we would, yes.
The rhetorical question,
Yeah.
sorry. And I would ask you to let us know what you think is best for a sunset.
I think it would be 6/30/27,
27.
because we would be anticipating a 2-year grant.
What? Is that too soon?
Oh, that's right, that's,
Yeah,
because it's FY
Yeah,
'26.
so all
Yeah,
funds
yeah,
would need to be
It's
expended.
always, it comes up quicker,
Yeah, yeah.
plus, it's just for Jen's benefit, because you can close out anything you want at any point in time.
Actually, this grant you can't, you have to be done, which is good.
No, but, yeah,
Yeah.
but what I mean is the sunset date is not,
Right.
you don't have to cut that fine point on. So we're all set on this
The
one?
funding source would be,
It's proposed from free cash.
So the next item is tree removal on River Road. This is part of the same,
Kind of the same discussion.
So actually, it looks like they're, yeah, okay, they're
Like
transposed in the
right.
packet.
Okay.
The ash trees are first in the packet, but the, River Road's first on the list, so we'll go to that, because that's the topic we're on right now.
Right now, the trees that are there are being undermined. And when that's happening, it's basically the trees are toppling and they're falling and ripping the riverbank apart. Classic. Excuse me? It's classic. Yep. It's taking a toll on the riverbank. And if we went down there and look where it'd be clear cut, it would take the pressure off of the bank. But in order to do that, there's other things we have to do. We have to go through conservation and national heritage.
Naturally.
But this would be a step that if we did get some money, we would be ready to go. These are years past, years ago, they thought that trees on the banks were good things. They're coming to see that it's not anymore. One of the reasons they cut all the trees on the artichoke down by Main Street, the same thing was happening. So they took them down, and there's another thing, they're doing some studies on trying to rebuild it higher and this and that. But things were happening down there where the trees were falling over because they were getting, the water was lapping underneath, washing out, and then being top heavy, falling over. So it's,
Is this clear cutting or selective cutting?
most everything down there, it's eventually gonna be an issue. I do have some pictures of area in front of the field of where we have put some stone to emergency wise. And, okay.
Yeah, Amy shared a lot.
It does help, but in order to be able to do it on a faster basis. And
So I think just dead trees, Butch, or?
no, it would be live trees. Yeah, it'd be just about everything. But like I say, this, excuse me,
Only within the easement, or you're gonna have to get permission from property?
we're gonna have to get permission from homeowners and everything else.
Thanks.
So it's not a for sure thing,
Yeah,
but it's,
Certain parts of it, for sure.
yeah,
We control certain parts of it.
yeah.
Homeowners control others. You have to have.
And some of the homeowners would probably go go along with it, because there's already some that's fallen, that they have already taken care of. Where they know the cost if the rest goes in front of their property.
and that would give them a view of the river as well.
Exactly. There's a lot to go, lot to do, but this will be the first step that when everything coincides as a go, we're ready to go.
And
What is
was
the
this,
timeframe?
was this identified as part of the risk work that we already did?
Actually, yes.
Okay.
In terms of timeframe, Chris, we, as Butch mentioned, it would need both Concom and Natural Heritage. We're a ways away from that. Because to go for those, permitting, we need to be specific about which trees. And also, to get accurate pricing, we need to do that. So, Butch and I talked earlier today, I think even if the funding was approved this fall, we think it's highly unlikely the work would actually take place before next.
Yeah, it would be next
Summer
spring,
anyway.
summer.
That's why I'm thinking I come back at Springtown meeting. The other comment is, when you're talking about the ash trees, I think on that memo, there's $110,000 budgeted for trees, 17 expended, there's still $92,000 in that account. So if you got a quick approval, you still have money there, we could replenish it in the spring. I just wonder if it's, I'm not opposed to it at all. We saw the reservoir in Newbury, we went over for the sidewalk.
Yeah.
They explained that, and I understand the logic of it. Again, I hope the homeowners will too. It's just, is it early in the process based on the permitting required? I don't think there's any resistance for the funding.
Yeah, and if, like Chris says, I mean, what we're hoping eventually is have an overview snapshot of trees in their entirety, no matter which warrant article or operating budget they came from. We kind of didn't really see that. We've seen it in pieces and stuff like that, so maybe the thing to do is just establish when you're gonna actually be expending funds by month. See if it works for you to work with the existing budget. You can always come back in spring for something that's still good for this current fiscal year. It's not clear that you need this money approved at this time.
Do they need to have approval of the funds to go before Concom and National Heritage?
No, I think we could handle those. There would be, for Concom, I think working with both the staff that you see here with our conservation agent, I think we could do those filings in-house. That wouldn't cost any money. Natural Heritage, it is a $300 filing fee. If they would consider this a single submittal, that's something we could absorb very easily in the operating budget. If it ended up being, multiple submittals, $300 times however many submittals. So, but I think the soft costs associated with the permitting, we would intend to do the permitting, prepare that documentation, at a staff level. We certainly wouldn't be paying a consultant to get them permitted. So I think if we, got the specific trees that needed to be, or were recommended for removal permitted, you know, we could come back in the spring for funding for actual tree removal. We also certainly recognize there's gotta be a lot of involvement of the neighborhood, because people aren't gonna, you know, we would never just go like cut down all these trees without people, at least, you know, people can agree or disagree as to whether that's the right thing to do, but I think people need to understand why the town would be proposing to do that. And I think once people understood, I think most people would understand that there's a, you know, an actual risk to the infrastructure, and it's at some point, you know,
But you will experience some pushback.
No doubt.
Trees.
no doubt about
The other thing is,
that.
this is scenic road, so it goes.
They're all scenic roads.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although there is an exemption to that, for high hazard trees, but.
Yeah, right.
But that can become subjective, so,
Hazard to what?
right.
So as you get pushback from someone, do you not cut those trees or?
Well, so it's the issue of, public and private, that's something that's pretty nuanced, because in the public land, the town has the right to, you know, it has to go through the right process, and permits are required, but it has the right to cut trees on its land. On private land, the town can't expend public money on private land. So the only scenario where the town would be cutting trees that are on private property would be if that property owner granted an easement, because the town would need to have property rights to it. It could be a temporary easement, as opposed to a permanent one, but it would need, the town has to have a property interest in order to lawfully expend public funds, so.
And it
some
has
of
to
the-
have a town interest in doing it.
Mhm. Yeah,
So-
yeah, it's gotta serve a public
Yeah, it
purpose.
has to
correct.
serve a public.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, the kind of aerial oblique, you know, images I sent around were kind of to illustrate, we're still at the level of, you know, which trees represent an imminent or fairly potentially near-term risk, then of those which are on public versus private. And, if it's on private, there's gonna need to be engagement with those specific property owners. So there's a lot of work ahead of us. I will say that, to circle back to a point, Wendy, that you made a few minutes ago on kind of who's driving the bus on this. I think it's fair to say, but you could tell me if I'm wrong, but I think it's fair to say that part of why we made this major effort to get this before this fall town meeting is because that was the committee's expectation. So I think at a staff level, we spoke earlier today, we felt like if the funding was approved in the spring, we would be fine with that.
Would be, yeah,
Yeah, so,
because it's gonna take a little bit to get there, but it's basically to make people aware how big a deal this is gonna be, and we wanna move on it.
yeah, so I do think if the decision's made to remove this from the warrant for the fall, I would definitely say, you know, let's take the opportunity to do, during the committee report section, a specific presentation on it, so it doesn't come up by surprise in the spring.
Right.
Can I make a suggestion that, I think it'd be really helpful for the select board to take a walk along the river at a low tide. And
Look down there,
I know you have, no, but have you walked the entire shore? Oh, okay.
I've been walking every Saturday, I walk at Rick too, so.
You walk the shore, not the road, but the shore?
Rick. I row my boat down the river and back up.
Do you do that at low tide?
Yes, I do. Very familiar with all the rocks and erosion. Also going up this way as well, so.
Okay, guys.
So is the consensus then to delay this until the spring?
I think it'd be wiser to definitely incorporate this part of the discussion on the River Road thing when you're at town meeting.
Yeah, it seems like that's a good opportunity. I would think all residents.
And again, I think we're all in favor of spending the money to do this, but I think it's premature right now. I don't think there's any resistance.
Right,
So
if I,
you're okay with that, Butch, if we?
Yeah.
Yeah, quite honestly, this is the first time that I've heard what you said, Angus, about the staff position was that it was just as well to wait. So
This is, as you know, we work every day, and there's, I mean, those are basically, so Butch had gotten a couple of, he reached out to a couple of prospective vendors to get kind of budget quotes, because what he put in for the 50 was really kind of a, you know.
I didn't wanna do a sticker shock.
Yeah, so I know I'd mentioned in the email I sent out a couple of days ago that one of the, you know, prospective vendor had quoted an amount of 785. Just shortly before the meeting, you know, Butch shared, he got a separate quote for, where's the amount, 157. So, you know, you can see there's like a range of like, so that's really where it comes to, you know, those aerial maps of like, we want trees A, B, and C. you know, it just, and now he had given both vendors specific guidance in terms of
Same instructions.
what were the street addresses? It was like-
25 River Road, basically the DDR culvert, down to 115 River Road where the garage is on the riverside. That's the most, you know, impacted right now. And I told him, he go, what are you looking for? I go, just for the sake of it, clear cutting. Because most of the trees down there, there's some up high on the bank, there's some low on the bank, that everything was from 12 to 20 and 30-inch trees. And they looked at me and I go, this is information finding only, just give me an idea, and that's basically what they did. You know, and when we do go for, in the spring, we'll have a better idea, and we'll go for specifics. And we can hopefully trim it down a little bit, or see what's up.
Or, you know, it may be orders of magnitude, it might be that
It
amount,
might be.
but I think we'd be more able to respond to, you know, public questions about like which trees and why and so forth, so, and also the whole public and private question needs to really be.
Is it likely that we would start with public trees first and do you sequence in a certain way just for efficiency or?
I
We
think-
should focus on the high risk areas.
Exactly, yeah, I think it's the risk that drives it, and if there's a tree that looks like it's a fairly imminent risk and it happens to be on private property, there'd be a motivation to,
Right.
but that takes time to put together, obviously,
Right.
yeah.
And the cost associated with these temporary easements too? up there?
Yeah, of
So
course,
that's a
there'd be legal costs, yeah,
big- Yeah,
yeah.
so maybe again, public information sessions, gather these people together and say who's in, you know, who's gonna be cooperative and who's gonna be resistant.
Right, there are efforts underway to kind of get the neighborhood organized because of the implications of this, and everybody who lives on that area really, you know, a number of people did come to the public meetings, but not everybody. And there are efforts underway really led by the committee to get the committee, to get the neighborhood organized so that they're coming to grips with what's going on there, and including things like the potential need, or not need, but the potential benefit to grant easements or property interest of the town.
All right, so
I'll make a motion to remove the article for the funding of tree removal on River Road.
a second, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All right,
So if I could, just one thing,
Yeah.
to what, something that Chris had said, so everybody, FinCom, including Ross, we put this off, it'll come back in the spring. You've heard what the reason is, what the rationale is. Are you favorable or not for this type of expenditure?
Yeah, a theoretical question.
I'm asking a question that's gonna come back in the spring. Jim, it'll be back in the spring.
Well, before I answer that, I have a question for Butch, actually, and then I think I can answer it. I remember that a few years back, there was a big splashy articles in the Newbury Daily News about a homeowner that lived near the chain bridge and at Newbury Fort Amesbury section. He cut down some trees in his backyard frontage on the Merrimack River, and he got fined big time and got kind of in trouble because those were potentially eagle nesting sites, and so going back to your steps that are involved in, like what you mentioned, natural heritage and the Concom, is that to alleviate things like what?
I believe so, yes.
yeah, that would be one of the, in the riverfront, you're not allowed to cut.
Right,
Unless you get a permit.
right, okay, so that's what we're talking, that's.
Yeah, Natural Heritage and Endangered Species Program is the full, you know, we call it natural heritage, it's natural heritage and endangered species, so yeah, it's all based on either known or estimated habitat for endangered or at risk. There's a couple of different categories, but that's what that's all about.
And they'll be involved along the river.
And they may impose, you know, conditions,
Condition,
you know, as
it's not gonna be a clear
permit, or we'll let you cut it, or we're gonna require you to replant it, like, you know, so those are other reasons why I think going through that
From
permit.
what I've heard in the past and what I've dealt with them since a short time, is that they don't really refuse, but they'll tell you how and when.
Okay.
Yeah, right, because they don't want you dropping a tree with a nest with sticks in it.
Right.
So favorably.
I have one more question. So this, the length from 25 to 115 that you just, River Road that you just talked about. What length of that 2.5 mile stretch does that represent? Is that like 10%, 20%, 50%?
That'd be
About a
close.
mile.
That'd be close to a mile.
So it's like 2/3 or 40%.
30%.
And then,
But do you wanna maybe show on the map, like roughly from point A to point B?
Talking from this, the DVR culvert here,
yeah,
we went over earlier. And I think down to
Yeah.
about here.
Yeah, that little notice. with
okay.
that.
This is where the garage is on the river bank.
Right.
So it's basically between the garage and that culvert.
And then
Could you
you
put up
use,
the one with the shoreline? There you go, you can see. That's all
Yeah, would
critical
be
shoreline.
this area here, and then the culvert.
so then, do we expect that we're gonna have another request coming for the rest of the remainder of that halfway at some point?
The request was for kind of clear cut, that was really to get a number for like a budget number. So it's not to limit the scope, it could, that same amount could be, you know.
We could
result-
stretch it,
Yeah, exactly, so it was more to, you know, given that we don't have like, you know.
like if National Heritage comes up with their suggestions of what to take, what not to take, then we might be able to stretch it further out.
Right, or you could consider going after the ones that are most at risk and, and not take out everything right away.
Right.
Because
Like I
it's
said,
more
this is-
important to stretch the money for the at-risk. than
Yeah,
it is-
this is more like, like I say, to avoid the sticker shock.
But I think it's probably fair to say there could be other costs.
Yeah.
And probably almost certainly.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
All right, so we move on. Okay. The next one is,
The ash trees.
ash trees. On that bush?
Yeah, we requested another 50,000, to continue our ash tree, program. We went with the spring and we received 50 grand. And we've taken upwards of, what, 150 trees now?
114, just for that money specifically.
And, back then, we let it be known that we would be coming back and we're gonna report. And how we did and asking for more. We've started out with, what, 377 trees,
371,
371.
got rid of 154 total between July and September. 114 of that was with that $50,000 specifically. We had some money, from chapter 90 funding that we took trees off of the streets that we paved this, season, which was Ash Street, Indian Hill, and, River Road.
We think we've done pretty well, with 50 grand and, we worked good with, 2 or 3 tree companies. And it just seems like it's a good deal for the town and making the road safer and doing it,
Certainly a lot less money than, had originally been projected.
Yes.
When we were hearing costs for trees, which seemed outlandish at the time.
But there, you know, there are some trees that are gonna need crane work and basically because where the location is too close to the wires and stuff like that. But the majority of the trees are coming down at a pretty decent.
We did
This
a
work
few.
will start now and continue through the spring.
I guess that's what we'd like to do.
And wasn't there 80 grand in
So,
the budget in the first place, and then we gave them another 50, so it should be 130.
in FY '24, we were budgeted for 80,000, we expended almost 106,000, and that was on regularly occurring tree expenses. That had nothing to do with the ash tree removal. So in FY '25, we got approved for 110. That was an extra 30, we asked for 50, but we got approved for the 30. So far, we've expended 17,700, that was just for, regular high hazard tree removal. We have another high hazard tree removal phase, hopefully going out in October, November.
So that money in the base budget is not being directed towards the ash trees?
Not at all.
That was the intent.
We took the position, Fred had offered it, we took the position that we would separate the ash out and work through the ash in an orderly fashion. We thought it was provident to do it that way. It didn't interfere with their normal and typical budget. In the end, we'll see, you know, whether the 17.7 becomes 100 or 120 or whatever, but you know, I personally, I'm fine with going through the ash trees specifically. I think it gives great clarity to why we're spending this.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't worry about the 110 versus the 17.7 right now. We'll see how that ends in the end.
Yeah, we did several different procurement methods. We did a couple, our first two phases were IFBs, which the same company got that. It wasn't a company that we have worked with previously. I think we put the IFB out in June. They didn't get in here till August. So it was a much smaller company and it took them much longer than what we're normally used to. We did our phase 3, we did a day rate with Mayor. We made sure that the location was all grouped together and they used the Centerbogan, which is,
It's basically a excavator with a grip and chainsaw on it, and they can take down like a 70-foot tree in under 10 minutes.
so we only paid $7,700 for the day for them to come in. We were able to get rid of 25
Could
trees.
you
So
scroll up a little, Andrew? I think everything that you're talking about is a little bit upward, isn't it?
then the second one, so go down.
Go down.
Yeah, right.
Great, okay. I knew it was someplace.
So then we just completed our phase 4, 2 weeks ago, which was with Iron Tree. We did a day rate, 2 days, a day rate with them, with the Centerbogan for the, they were $7,000 a day and we got the 36 trees. So we actually gave them a list of, I think it was 55 trees and we said, just what can you get with this for the 2 days? And they were able to get the 36. There were some that needed crane work. That would go on a different list for our future phase, but they were able to get rid of the 36 just with the Centerbogan for those 2.
What Rick said, I think it was shared by a lot of people that you did a very good job with the amount of money you had. And so, maybe part of that is because we get to focus on these known knowns and make it easier for them to come in and do the work. I don't know why, but it seems like it worked out really well.
Yeah, I think that, this next, if we get approved for the next 50, I think we could definitely get another 3 or 4 phases. And that, and depending what's left in our operating budget for FY 25, towards the end of the fiscal year, we could very well have enough to do another phase with our own operating budget.
That's really unbelievable. I mean, for $7,000, they took on 25 trees.
Yeah.
Cut them up in pieces, disposed of them, brought all of them away, the whole thing.
Yeah, so Mayor, they actually own a bark, like mulching company, so they take everything and actually profit off of the trees after, so it works out for them.
Yeah, what Mayor does, they'll come in with 2 log trucks, the Centerbogan with 1 cutter on the ground. And everything, there's no chipping, everything goes right into the truck, and they bring it up to our recycling area, they unload everything, and they'll have a pile, say, 30 feet tall by 100 feet long, and they have their trip. They have a trip machine come in, shredder machine, and they blow it all into a trailer truck, and it gets hauled off. And they can do that pile in under 4 hours.
Yeah, we had like, I think, 6 or 7 trees removed from the back of St. Anne's Church. And they did the same thing. They brought the truck in, they grinded it right there, or the chip is right there on site.
The way that there's no chipping, there's nobody getting hurt, it's all machine work basically.
All right,
Make a motion to fund the $50,000 warrant article for the removal of dead ash trees.
Second.
All in favor?
So do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the $50,000 article for the townwide removal of ash trees.
We have a second, Dennis second. Ross, you there?
I'm here.
All in favor? Ross?
I'm in favor.
So it's unanimous 5-0. Who's gonna write this, Dennis?
Right?
Okay, there you go. And then,
Just don't use that tree and comparison.
Right.
yeah, we've seen that. And then, sunset date on this?
I'm fine with June 30th of 2025. If we get approved, it'll be done,
Be done by springtime.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
Can I
Okay.
just say what a phenomenal job you guys are doing? I mean, around town, it just feels cared for. Things are cut, the signs of the roads are taken care of, and I'm sure you're. I try. Thank you very much.
So Angus,
We're
are
a
you
good
comfortable with 6:30? Yeah, you guys are an extraordinary team. Are you comfortable with 6:30, 25?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Okay.
Caitlin said it, he's comfortable.
It will be done, like I say, if we get it.
I think he's sick of me giving him lists every other week to go mark out trees, but it's all right.
Great, all right.
Well, great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. So,
I want
given the late hour, can we,
thank you.
thank you. We have people that are
Yeah.
from out of town, so
Yeah.
having come in, do
Yeah.
you want to just defer the rest of these till your October 2nd meeting, or?
I don't mind that, guys. What do you think?
We have a board, just free cash and the unpaid bills.
Well, unpaid bills, didn't we do? I thought we did.
No,
And
no, there's a question about the clock.
Oh, the clock. Oh, where is the
All right,
clock?
let's not get started on the clock.
Okay. Forget the clock. Yeah, are you guys fine? We're meeting next week. We'll have this. Are you gonna join us?
I will be there.
Great, thank you. Ross, you're okay with next Wednesday?
I'll promise you there.
Yes, I am.
Good, good. And Angus, you're good with Wednesday?
Yes, yeah, I've got it on my calendar. Yeah.
Okay, good, excellent. So we'll see you next week.
Good,
So we can leave, right?
if you'd like,
Okay.
if you have
well,
something better to do.
we would like to-
I think he was adjourning.
Yes, so we are adjourned.
Yes,
We are
okay.
adjourned, okay.
Great.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you very much.
Bye, everybody.
One thing, I see Rob's been here for a little bit from Cataldo.
Yep.
And I know Dwyer is on via Zoom. Unfortunately, we haven't gotten our town council comments back yet on the draft. I did
Okay.
send it and I had been told that we
Yeah.
could expect a response, but we haven't. So I don't know, I don't wanna, I wanna be respectful of both Rob and Chief Dwyer's time. I don't know if the board would be, comfortable taking any kind of action contingent on edits town council may recommend, or if you'd rather see that draft in front of you. The draft contract for the ambulance is substantially similar to what you saw about 3 months ago, with the change to the language in terms of the, patients, the ambulance and the patient and the employer is much more articulate in terms of what hospital they go to. So there was that change made. Other than that, it's the same draft that was in front of you back in June.
Mhm.
So, but I do want to apologize. I thought we would have town council's review. But we've been, in fairness to them, we have been throwing them a lot of work.
I think Rob and I can make this happen really quickly once that's returned from town council.
Okay, so are we comfortable voting on it? Assuming that we accept town council changes, or do you want to see the?
I'd like to see what I'm voting
Yeah,
on.
no.
Yeah, I kind of like to see the,
Okay.
So with that, back in June, the board took a vote to extend the contract by 90 days. So that brings us to the end of the month, which is part of why we had tonight penciled in. So I would say at minimum, we would want to extend it another 30 days.
I think it's 60, just so you clean.
Sure, yeah, no sense creating a deadline, because I think it ain't broke right now, right?
No, it's actually working really well. In fact, between West Newbury's public safety and our ambulance, we actually had a cardiac arrest saved with a delivery person the other day. They dropped in somebody's front yard. And when they got him to the hospital, he was actually fighting the intubation and they actually had to sedate him. So the system's working really well. At least on my side, and I'm sure Chief Dwyer feels the same.
Absolutely, Rob.
So is that all right with you? We just extend it
Yeah,
30 days?
okay.
60 days.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so you
Make a motion to extend the current contract with Cataldo to 60 days, and then looking to the review of town council on the contract.
Sorry, all in favor? All right.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, sorry to keep you waiting.
Oh, that's all right, Chief. Thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we also move ahead to, item FC, request for support letter for acquisition of land. Diane, sorry to keep you waiting. No, not at all, thank you. So,
You received a letter from me back in August, I believe. Just a courtesy notice, similar to the one that I had sent earlier when we acquired a portion of Evergreen Farm Trust property directly adjacent. And so I understand that you requested I come here this evening, so.
Do you remember what the questions were? I can't, it's only been 2 weeks and it's just gone from my mind. Do you guys remember, we had a couple specific questions about the acquisition.
Well, I mean,
Can you pull it up on?
Yeah.
This is the Cook property, correct?
Yes,
It's the back section of it, the frontage on Middle Street is
correct.
being preserved.
The frontage on Middle Street is the northwest corner of this property. So basically those fields and an existing house.
So will there be public access on those properties?
Yep, almost all of our property is always open to the public, free of charge, dawn to dusk.
Chris, do you have any questions you had?
No, I don't know if I had a question, but I think it's generally a good idea. You know, we're looking for a letter of support, I guess, right?
Right, and I think I had, when I had submitted this request, I also gave you a copy of the one that the letter of support that you so kindly had issued for the Evergreen Farm Trust parcel just a few months ago, so.
My question would be, why would we not support it?
I think part of the conversation was, is there any connection between this and the other properties on Ash Street that are currently in limbo? I don't know whether, you know.
What properties would those be?
I don't know, is this an appropriate topic for?
I don't know if we'd want to go into depth, but in terms of the property that, Fish and Game is asserting ownership to.
Oh, yeah, no, it has nothing to do with that.
Nothing directly,
But could it?
No.
nothing directly, but.
All right,
Yeah, so, yeah, it sounds like nobody had this specific question.
well, we did, it's just been so much information between, I think we.
Yeah, and in her, note to me, I sent her the Zoom link a day or two ago.
Yeah.
Wow, it's a big agenda. I'm like, well, look at the other 50 agendas in the last year. It's pretty typical. We're very, very busy, so.
Yeah, I mean, there was discussion, just trying to, determine just which part of the parcel and what were the characteristics of the parcel at the last meeting, and I don't know if we went away 100%.
Yeah, we did, I mean, that's right, Rick. There was a kind of recognition that what's shown here differs somewhat from the current parcel boundaries for the town assessors, the GIS maps. So, does this represent a division of?
No, that represents the existing assessors. The only difference is cutting off that northwest corner.
And that's for the houses?
Mhm.
The house in the frontage.
Exactly, so there'll be an A&R plan that will be presented to the planning board to approve.
So is this part of a kind of a plan for this area? Are you looking to connect certain?
Well, we tend to acquire lands adjacent to land that we already own.
Sure.
Because a larger block of wildlife habitat is much more valuable than, say, a quarter acre in the middle of a city. So it provides habitat to a much greater suite of.
Now, do you buy the land outright, or are you just getting restrictions on them? Or?
No, this particular one will be buying in fee.
There's another one. I don't know if I should be saying this, but I will. The house is for sale, right across from, goes up the hill. Right by Brickett, just before Brickett Street, there's a house for sale that abuts your land out on the back of Crane Neck. And it's a significant parcel of land and the back is all wet. I didn't know if anybody had entered into conversations with them to acquire the land, but maybe not the house.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one, but, I will give you my business card. And, if you could send me an email, give me a call, I'd be, interested in speaking with
Yeah, I mean,
the
they're asking
landowner.
almost $1 million. The house is serious property. But there's a lot of land on the back section, so I didn't know if there would be a reasonable expectation that you guys got involved and acquired some of the land, not the house.
Yeah, maybe. What, do you know what the street address is?
So, you're looking at it here.
Yeah, which, let's see.
It's right across directly from Brickett.
On Ash Street. Yeah.
Right there, here.
So it's 12.7 acres.
And the house is right up on the street, all back is all wet and attaches, it abuts to a lot of your land.
And it's, R66. Okay,
They could potentially get some relief if you bought the property and could reduce the price of the house and maybe property, I don't know.
yeah, I'll certainly, look into it. You know, obviously you have to have a willing seller, but,
I think it could facilitate them to sell the house. They had some revenues from the property.
well, obviously we can only pay, as a state agency, we can only pay appraised value. So if it's predominantly wetland that's unbuildable, then obviously the value.
Appraised value is not very high, right?
Excuse me?
I said the appraised value wouldn't be very high.
Yeah, exactly.
So maybe worth a conversation.
Yeah, sure. Doesn't hurt to ask.
Okay, any other questions? Fran? Do you want to make a motion to, provide a letter of support?
Yeah, I make a motion
Just
to
use
provide
the
letter of
template
support.
that we
Yeah,
did for.
yeah.
All right,
Seconded.
all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thanks
Appreciate
for
it.
coming. And
Have
if
a
I
good
should,
evening.
what is your timeline to get the letter?
Within the next couple weeks.
Okay, great,
You have-
great.
You have an example that.
I know, I just, Rebecca's out tomorrow.
I
and
can
it's
draft
weekend.
it for you if you
Pretty-
want.
It's, well, no, we'll take care of it, it's just, we're
Oh,
pretty busy.
Rest of next week, you said?
And tomorrow, so, yeah, so if it can wait till the week after next, that's great, that's all I wanted to hear. So,
All
thank
right.
you.
all right, great. Thanks a bunch. If I could just get, an email or something that says, that would be great, or
Sure.
a copy of the minutes or something like
Just
that. you know.
confirming that. we-
Yeah, yeah,
All right, I can send you.
great. Thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, I know Christine is sticking around for the Page School, but if we could just, do item A first, which is.
That's right, sure, I think we're here for like patient zero, but.
Okay.
Okay, good.
So, Jeff, we have a very important question for you.
Sure.
Conservation or energy or both?
How about both?
Awesome. Do I have a motion?
Loading question.
Yeah, no, do you guys have any questions?
No, like we saw at the
Right.
previous meeting, we're
Right.
thrilled with the qualifications, so I'm tickled to death, get back to actually step up.
Especially for both,
Right, that's great.
all right?
So I'll make a motion to,
If I could, before you make the
That's
motion,
right,
just,
yeah. Town manager.
there's a little bit of a nuance on in the state statute, for towns with the town manager form of government, the town manager is the appointing authority for Concom, which is different from how it was handled for the prior 200 years before I got here. So the way we've handled this procedurally is I make the appointment and I ask the board to basically ratify the appointment. So I would gladly make the appointment. And so I would just say, Chris, in your motion, if it could be an appointment to one, but on the other one, basically, I don't know if ratify is the word we've used or, agree, some affirmation of that appointment. It's a little nuanced, but I just.
No, it's important.
we need to know the terms too.
That would be helpful, but without Jim here, I don't have that right at my fingertips.
All right. Conservation Commission is, vacancy one is to 6/30/27. So you're a lifer.
And energy and
The
sustainability.
energy and sustainability is appointed annually.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a motion for Jeff Garrison to be appointed to the Energy and Sustainability Committee to fill a one-year term and to ratify Angus's appointment to the Concom through 6/30/27.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Appreciate it. So
Thank you.
You could
Jeff,
stop by the.
Jeff, while you're here, before you go, there is an Energy and Sustainability Committee meeting, I think on the 16th, and can we actually just confirm that day?
And, let's see, when conservation meets.
Yeah, so there's, Energy and Sustainability on the 16th, and the Concom, I can't find it, I thought there was.
They met on Monday night.
Yeah,
Was it
so
this?
it's usually every 2
Okay.
weeks.
Okay. All right. For some reason, I thought there was one next to it.
So,
Yeah.
if you just stop by the town clerk's office, they'll swear you in and you know the details of what's going on.
And I'll, I guess, allow the meeting minutes immediately, and they'll start. Won't be a big surprise.
Yeah,
We-
we need to follow up on that.
Yeah.
The planning board was a surprise.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when the associate member,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
but. Good.
What time do the committees meet?
Concom usually meets at 7, but, have to check the agenda. Actually, it might be good if you could stop in and meet the agent, Clay Hutchinson, who's new to town, but maybe just connect with him. He may have some background information as well as training that he might suggest.
I can send some email introductions tomorrow, and Jim is at a conference tomorrow, so
Oh, right.
in terms of swearing in, Max can swear him in, but if you're gonna come in, it'd probably be better to come in when we have everyone here, so I'll send some email introductions for both of those, so that to kind of, and going forward, I will make sure that gets done.
Yeah, great. All right.
Yeah, energy and sustainability is typically 5:30.
5:30, and the Concom meeting
It's 7.
is the next meeting is.
This is the 9th.
I think, but check with,
Yeah, well, it's shown here, I just looked, yeah, it shows on the 9th on the town calendar.
on the 7th,
Say again?
October 7th.
Oh, boy, I'm sorry, I was, okay, thanks.
Okay, great.
Was on the wrong one.
Okay, so now we'll jump to item E. Is somebody, are you keeping track? No, you're not.
Right, yeah. Like a ping pong ball.
Yeah.
Check.
No. Okay, so item E, the page 4 for issues assessment.
The version I have in the packet is it updated a little bit from, wait, that's not the one. From, there were some slight adjustments made as a result of our yesterday, remote meeting. So what I'm putting up on the screen is what's in the packet. It's not exactly the same.
Thanks, Jeff.
So, if you want, I can pull out of my, get out of my email the exact one, so.
Well, only a few $100 difference, right?
Yeah, but the number was a little different because we asked them to build in a couple of working meetings. Let me just pull that one out. Well,
There's a couple wording changes.
yeah.
So Christina, it was a little, like, some of the things that they're charging extra for, I would have thought would be part of the, like, the tone adjustment.
Yeah, that was,
It was 1,500, but it just seems like some of these things should have been part of the, you know, the original. So, but I guess that's a value of the fight.
yeah, I mean, Angus can explain, like, we had the RFQ, which was very thorough. And
Well, yeah, so the contract doesn't have everything that was in the RFQ, and that's really for two reasons. For one thing, it was RFQ, not an RFP.
Yeah.
So the vendors were proposing based on what they could do within the available budget, and every one of the vendors was clear that what we were asking for didn't match $85,000 budget. What we were asking for was not as complete as an MSBA feasibility study, but it was based on, that was where we got a lot of the raw materials, the MSBA materials, and those studies are hundreds of thousands of dollars. So basically the vendors proposed based on what they could offer within the 85. So the contract was, so for instance, like the RFQ mentioned, like hazardous materials, that's not in the contract. So as far as things like tone, that wasn't so much an issue of anything to do with the procurement process. That's more, I think, just based on the way they structured their billing. Didn't leave a lot left over to take the draft report to a final report. And I think, my read on this is once they got the comments, they realized that in addition to the substantive things that we were looking for them to add, like the O&M or the code triggers, energy, even, there's some kind of wholesale ways the information is presented that's gonna take them time. So they only held back, a couple of thousand, I think $3,000, something like that, to turn the draft report to a final report. Yeah, so I think, that's,
My guess is tone is addressing some specific comments that they saw,
well, we've been really clear with them that we think it's, the way it reads is too rosy, gives too, and Sam was part of yesterday's meeting and he's been very, very helpful on just kind of trying to make sure that they are seeing it through his eyes in terms of code triggers and the ripple effect of some of the repairs that would be needed.
So I did, at the risk of provoking you further, Rick, the energy analysis, that's an additional 10 grand. Is that being driven by comments that are reflected in your opinion, or is that other?
There were comments on that, and I asked Sam that, because that stood out to me as well, but Sam was very clear that that was important, because that really is gonna drive the cost to maintain the building versus a new building.
Okay. And that was not part of the original scope in any way?
No.
Would that be part of an MSB feasibility study?
I don't know. Yeah, MSBs it probably would be, right? They're very thorough.
Well, they have pretty high energy, the state's program for school construction has a very high energy standard now.
Yeah, that would be new versus.
At the end of the day on this, you knew that they had a skinny down there to dovetail into a budget. So when you come back and ask them to give you pricing, they're gonna give you pricing for everything. It's reasonable. I think if we have to go forward with it, because if we don't, the presentation to the town would be pretty hollow. So if we'd been more interactive in the process early, we might have had some of these plugged, but we did.
I will say that as I look back to the very beginning of this, I know, and I'm not trying to like hindsight 2020, but I think it's fair to say, the $85,000 figure, Wayne had like he'd made some phone calls but he really didn't have like a good basis for that. And I think as we had that working group last winter and had a number of meetings to put together the scope, we were very aware that the scope we were putting together was like not an $85,000 study. So I think, I don't know what we can learn from that going forward in terms of, was it premature to ask for the money back when the 85,000 was asked for? Because at that time, like we hadn't had that working group. We didn't have a scope, it was basically, Wayne kept calling it a feasibility study. It really wasn't. I'm the one who kept saying, don't call it that. It's a conditions assessment. And that's what it's called, because that's what it is. It's not a feasibility study, but anyway, but as I turn the clock back to whenever the 85K was approved, I don't even remember.
That was before me.
Yeah, it was before you, but what we knew then, like, we didn't have a scope. We were, I think it was I forget even who was on the board, but we were trying to be responsive to what we were hearing from the community and from the board and probably from FinCom at the time. That, you know, we need to figure out what we're gonna do with paid school. We need to really look at it comprehensively. And I remember at that time, and I don't think it's really any different now, that every time anything was brought to town meeting to do anything at paid school, people would say, well, why are we putting money in? What's the big picture? And so I think Wayne was making a good faith effort to say, everyone's asking what's the big picture, we need some help to do that. He came up with a number, and I'm not in any way like, you know, he's doing the, you know, we're all doing the best we could, but the between that number and then preparing the much more detailed scope, which also had a lot more public, you know, not just public input, but like Greg Hadden and was a major part of helping with the scope. He hadn't, I don't believe, been in any way involved with the conversation of what the original budget amount should be. So a lot's different now. I mean, as you know, this was before Christine's position was created, before the DPW restructured, before I had a dedicated assistant. Like me and Wayne were both juggling things and working.
But this is not a bad way for the process to.
I'm just thinking in terms of going forward, like if we were to do something like this again with current staff, I think there'd probably be a more, I mean, we thought and meetings, but there weren't the kind of meetings we're having now with like all the department heads around the table and Brian and all the people and Sam, and like, we weren't even doing that back then. You know? So I think there probably would be more on the front end to get to maybe a better scope before we asked for the money, and maybe shop that around to say, this is an $85,000 study or $125,000 study, and I think we would have been told this still happened.
I think at the end, you still would have gotten hit for more, because I think the town, with the reviews that were done, were fairly demanding.
Yeah.
And so
Absolutely.
the contractor, nor could the town 2 years ago have foreseen that level of response in the document, because we're realizing this is a pretty critical document, so.
Yeah, I
It
think-
doesn't surprise me. I mean, we're not gonna do the math for it, I don't think, right, 3D scan?
No, well, that's my opinion.
No.
I mean, I remember they brought that in as part of
Yeah,
the
I did.
original.
Yeah, and I did, just in fairness, I did specifically ask them to put it in here.
Yeah.
Not because I am saying we need to do it, but I want to choose not to do it rather than not. Yeah, and they did say, on that the 6 months wouldn't need to start. It would start whenever we wanted. If we wanted the 6 months to start next June, we could do that. So I will just wave the flag, not to try to say we should necessarily do it, but I do think that, you know, I envision like public meetings where you can actually walk people through the building. I think that could be incredibly powerful, because I've seen this done. You guys probably have in other buildings too, but I've seen it done. It's, you know, it's not just photorealistic, it's photos. It's actually a 3D scan basically of the building. So you can have an interactive walkthrough of a building that you really can't replicate realistically in any other way. You're not gonna get hundreds of people.
Yeah, unless you walk 200 people through.
But that's not realistic,
No, I
you know, and we
understand.
all went to the Whittier walkthrough last, you know, winter, which was probably too little too late. But even that, like, you just wonder, like, you know, there was a small number of people out of the 11-town region. How many people actually saw the interior of that building? Whereas if we had something that we could use in a meeting like this or in a larger forum to actually show people.
Well, and the
What's
other thing about
the price of that? Well, it is the price. What's the value of that? I would argue there's some, is it $10,000? That's for you to say, but it's some significant value from public process.
Yeah, if you use Whittier as an example, that was pretty ineffective too, because you had people, some of whom really didn't know all the building and who were leading the group.
Yeah.
And even if they did, unless you were within 10 feet of them or 15 feet of them, you
That's
couldn't
true.
hear what they were saying.
That's true.
So it was, you know, it was sort of a walk through the building, observation on your own, catching little quips from time to time, and talking with other people who you were with, but not really hearing their dialogue about the building.
And a lot of the side chatter, at least for what I think you and I were kind of walking together for, anyhow, a lot of the side chatter was about the politics of like how the process has been handled, not about like.
Sniping.
So from that standpoint, I agree. I think this would be much more effective in terms of a presentation. If you really want the public to understand what it is they're looking at and talking about.
Let me suggest a motion and then we can discuss around it. How's that sound?
Great.
We'll make a motion to take $45,000 from ARPA to support the further work of Page School and the data port. And I came up with that number because you take the 10 grand plus the 600, plus the 32.5 is 43.1, and then I put 45 just because you're probably gonna need another meeting in there somewhere. I just wanna have a cushion to revisit this.
So second.
Okay, now-
So wouldn't it make more sense to wait until we know which direction we're going to do this scan? I mean, if we're gonna,
You don't have to spend it right away. I'm just saying you are supporting this. If it gets to that point, you can decide if you want it.
I don't know how long this pricing for, is it?
It's the same price they quoted us when we hired him initially, so I'd be surprised if it changed. I guess I'm of two minds of that. To your question, Wendy, I think at least the way I'm thinking of this is it would be helpful to make the decision. Because some number of people would, it would inform their thinking as to whether this building is a good investment to stay in by seeing things with their own eyes that they might not take the time to walk through. But to Chris's point, I feel like if there's an intent to do it, you should include it. If there's a thought to like, well, let's approve it and then maybe not do it, let's not do it for the reason that with the ARPA monies, once they're encumbered.
ARP is diminished to such a small number. This is a good use in my.
Well, it might be, but I guess if you voted, I would say we would, because it would need to be under contract, this year, so I
I
wouldn't
mean, we
want
could always add this before December 31st.
You could.
If there was money left in our.
You could, yeah.
You could, I just would rather have one clean
Yeah,
vote to
I'm
be
just
done.
not sure. This is like a one-time thing to show people. If we get 10 people, is it worth $10,000 to show them?
You're gonna get more than 10 people watching. This is gonna be.
Well, also,
hot
it's
issue.
good for 6 months. I mean, access to the scan for 6 months.
Once we start, yeah.
Right, once we start. So that presumably you could, or maybe should have more than one.
Well, look at the
after
after
this,
this, 70,000 left. There's not a whole lot more you can do on big issues in this. I think you get a reasonable bang for the buck. I'm not a fan of 10 grand doesn't matter for it, but I think this is gonna be such a significant discussion in town. You've got to present them. The report kind of frightened me because it was so rosy.
Yeah.
I think you've got to see the physical space to realize the reality.
So at what point would they do this scanning?
I think if we signed the contract, I assume they would do it this fall, they would do it this calendar year. And then they would make it available to us once we say we want to start the 6 months.
So you're thinking around like when they do the final public meeting or?
Well, yeah, so we've talked about, ideally, having the report, amended report, expanded report, whatever, complete, by the end of the calendar year. Including some internal reviews, or not internal, but, working group reviews and board reviews. Before we kind of go big with the public distribute, it's all public, anyone can ask for it and look at it. But in terms of going big with hey, there's this report that every person in town really ought to take the time to read. We've talked about late January ideally, being the timeline for that, so I think we'd want to have it for that, for a big public meeting, and then subsequent to
Is
that.
the access to the scan, it's 6 months to $600. If the town decides.
Yeah, you can extend it.
Too much, you can pick it up.
Yeah.
Because once the conversation starts, there'll be a little access, but I think the further it goes, the more people are gonna want to see it.
We might want to just confirm that the data will continue to be available. I can't imagine they delete the data, but probably.
Maybe the town can purchase it and acquire it, I don't know, rather than doing a monthly thing. So I'm willing to do whatever you guys want. on the
I'm
number.
not really sold on it, but if you guys think I just think it's like an add-on that's not gonna be really, it sounds good, but I just don't, I feel like people.
My thought was when I read the report, if you handed that to the town or presented that report in front of town meeting, I'm gonna sit there and go, why are we considering?
Well, that's why we have to rewrite it, you know? Or.
But I'm not sure it's still gonna have the if you've been in the building, you feel how terrible it really is, and that's gotta get communicated. With the high school, they did it pretty well previously, they had lots and lots of photos. And I think that convinced a lot of people to the dire situation.
Mhm.
I drove by the other day, look at the outside of the building, it looks pretty good. Once you get into it and you see all these things, maybe the report communicates that, I don't know.
Mhm.
Well, the other thing about it, you know, however many pages the report ends up being, how many people are really gonna read the whole thing? You know, it's great to think that, you know, that you're gonna get significant
You know,
reading, but you're not. And whereas if there's a somewhat compelling visual thing to look at, you're more likely to, or I think more people are likely to look at it.
I can go either way on it, doesn't. I just thought it would be a good use of the ARPA fund where it's winding down.
Well, anything else on the horizon, I guess, for the harbor funds that?
No, basically, there's, the only other thing I had is like, potential is, I should have taken off because we already funded that, so I just didn't think that, but that should come off, so there's nothing that anyone's talked about, I know, you know, I saw a twinkle in Brian Richards' eye when I mentioned the remaining balance. We're not gonna leave anything on the table. I think if you vote it tonight, whatever, or tonight or whenever you vote it, at whatever amount, we'll update this, and I would say, you know, to department heads, hey, there's a remaining balance of X, you know, and probably set an internal deadline of like, if you have anything, and whether that ends up being some relatively small ticket item from the capital program that's already an identified need, that would probably be my preference, but or if it's something that, you know, something else, but.
Mhm.
But I'd like to get any proposals before you, and that also, of course, is contingent on us, you know, getting the bridge under contract.
Mhm.
This
Right,
calendar year,
because
so.
it would be, if we have 30 or 40, you know, what would the number be left, but right, it's around 30 grand at this point. Based on Chris's motion, at least, what was the current?
It'd be like, there's like just about, yeah, about 25.
25, right, so 25, who knows if that would be needed for the bridge, but it would be
Right.
better to have it available than to not have it available.
Yeah,
And of
yeah,
course, we'll have that number
Next week.
next week.
fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Christine, what do you think about the, whatever they call it?
The 3D scan.
Yeah, I could go either way. I mean, I think, I definitely agree with Chris that being in the building, like my first time in there, when you get the idea of the size of it and how like institutional it feels. And going in and seeing the boiler, I mean, that's just crazy. But at the same time, I think the scan is a really good tool that might work for other people. I mean, so I think maybe it's not for everybody, but I think for a lot of people, it'll speak to them. Especially, you know, if you're looking at parents that are in their 30s or whatever, and they're used to doing everything online and it's, you know.
Well, is the scan available online or?
That I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure that this is like a self-help thing.
That would just be for us.
I don't know, actually, I don't know, so that might be some, maybe you could,
We
vote
just
to base
approve
on that.
about it, and then-
Yeah, and then come back in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and,
I think that's a good
yeah,
idea.
that's fine, yeah, I wish I knew, and I feel like a year ago, I might have known, but I,
Quite honestly, even if it's only available at a single location, you know, if we have a meeting to talk about the building, you know, a large public meeting, then the more interesting visual content there is that really shows what's going on, the better.
You could have like a virtual meeting or any meeting and that's gonna be, you know, recorded.
yeah, and one other point that came up and this was a while back, but in terms of, even if, let's say they say this is something that's in the cloud, that you can provide the link and post the link on your website, we would talk to Dwyer, because he may not
There's some,
want that,
yeah.
because of the sensitivity of how much detail do you want people to have in terms of access and egress and so forth, so.
We had asked, GNF that question, And I think they don't typically provide like, yeah, egress and stuff like that, but if they have like individual rooms, you know, you could, where you can't, it doesn't show you like how to get into a room or whatever, I think that would be fine.
That's a curious question. Just reading this story the other day, you go onto these real estate websites, they have a very similar, you can go to the
Yeah.
house
Right,
and more
right.
3D.
Yeah.
They just broke up a crime group and they did exactly that. They knew what they were going, where they were, how they were accessing it, what security systems were in place. So these are things you don't think about until it's happened to you. So
Mhm.
that's a pretty good comment to check with the chief. So I'll revise my motion to just do the 32.5 of the ARPA funds to support the additional
Okay,
estimate.
all right, second,
I'll second, and I guess we can discuss.
could we vote? What else do you want to discuss?
Well, typically there's discussion after the motion is
Okay, I
seconded.
just-
So I want to make sure that we're gonna come back and revisit this.
Okay. So you'd be able to. look at
Yeah.
the question?
Yeah, we can, if, you know, with the board's vote, we can go ahead and sign the contract and then come back and talk further about the scan and.
Okay,
Yeah, like, is there any way to, instead of just have viewing ability, can we acquire it and just own it
Mhm.
versus paying a monthly fee? That would be something I want to know too.
Mhm.
And also the chief's input. And to Rick's point, yes, I think 100% we revisit it once we get an educated answer.
is it worth asking department heads if they have any wishes before we give up this 10 grand or the dwindling balance, or would that just be using it up? It's not a.
I'd say on the 10 grand, I think, I mean, let's focus on what's in front of you and then
Okay,
bring that
right,
up when
all
it
in
comes up.
favor? Right, then we need a motion to use ARPA funding for this.
Maybe that in the motion, that's fine.
You did say ARPA funding?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, then that's good, Angus.
Yeah,
Okay. All right, thank you.
great, thank you very much.
Christine.
Thanks.
All right. Good rest of your meeting.
All right.
We're just warming up.
Oh, yeah.
How do you want to go back to the beginning, Angus?
You know, I mean, obviously, I'm in it for the long haul, I don't have a curfew, but if, some of the items under updates are things that you know, feel that materials in the packet speak for themselves, there are some items that I didn't put materials in the packet that I thought I'd deal with, verbally, so I just want to be mindful of time and knowing that we have an executive session as
All right,
well.
so we'll just take 15 minutes and is that enough time?
Sure, yeah, you want to start back at the beginning, or?
Yeah.
The only other action item on tonight's agenda is minutes, so, other than the one.
Which I haven't read.
All right, that makes that easy.
Okay, so we'll table the minutes.
So the May 23rd minutes were not in the packet, right? So that was just the prior.
So that was, the minutes you'd already, those were the detail.
Right.
Yeah, and yeah, what happened, actually, I was putting together the packet Tuesday night,
Mhm.
and I noticed that the version in the packet looked to have some PDF comments, and I didn't have the bandwidth to so I just took them out because and obviously no one else was in the office, so I couldn't ask anyone because I know comments were previously made,
Mhm.
so I didn't want to put something in that didn't
Yeah.
revise, so I, and the agenda had already been posted.
Was
so.
there particular significance to the May 23rd minutes?
Well, this was the one where, so it's the minutes are approved. What happened here was because of the ZBA meeting where I said in the meeting that the applicant had represented potential for two houses, I felt compelled to put something on file with the ZBA that I feel that ought to be part of their written record. So I had asked Max to go back.
That was May 23rd?
It was, yeah. Yeah, I know, it seems like it was more recent, but it was actually May
Yeah,
23rd.
because they came here, well before the ZBA.
Okay, when they came here, I thought you were talking about.
Oh, yeah, no,
Okay,
yeah,
right.
that's,
Sorry.
so, I mean, I think it's debatable, I think it's, I don't know if it's even a good idea to ask the board to vote those, because you've already voted your minutes. I just feel, and maybe the end result is I just write a memo for the ZBA and just you know, say on such and such a date, this is what was said, and that way it's my memo, it's not your, because it's not a verbatim transcript, it's a good, you know.
More detailed.
Yeah, it's much more detailed, but so I wouldn't be
Okay.
opposed to just like not putting that before you again. But I did feel compelled, because I had said that in a public hearing. So I feel like I ought to put something and not just like put this consequential verbal comment and not have anything on the record, like there ought to be something on the record. And they ought to know that that was said.
Okay, so we'll pass on the August 6th minutes. All right, so now we'll go back up to the top, or do you want to do the pickleball court locations?
I'd be,
That's G.
yeah, I can tell you what the direction I'm going on that. And I got something from Jen Geary that I didn't, I got it yesterday, so I didn't include it, but I can put it up on the screen and kind of tell you what I had marked up very crudely with just like blocks, like any location that I either thought of or heard of at various meetings as to potential locations, whether good or bad, knowing some of these are bad ideas. But I wanted to just put like every last thing I hear about, let's just put on the table, because that way you're not 6 months down the road and someone say, well, what about the annex? It's like, no, we looked at the annex didn't work. It took, okay. So I had done a very crude like box overlay. I gave those to Jen, who's pretty adept with the GIS, to say, can you do scale like of what might fit there? So I just got this from her yesterday. I haven't had a chance to look at it closely. I did glance at it, and it's basically the same sites I gave her, plus Brian had a couple of thoughts that he had sketched out for me and I gave those to Jen as well. So, and just to preface this, we spent about $40, just under $40 last week from the US Pickleball Association. There's a 183-page guide on how to build a pickleball court yourself. It's got the depth of subgrade, it's got all the specs, it's got some, you know, advertisements from people who build courts as well. So there's some, but it's basically it's got all the dimensions for 1 court, 2, 4, 6, 8, like it's very, very good. So I gave her a couple of sheets of that so she would know generally what dimensions we're talking about. So, you know, someone had mentioned Old Town Hall, the Town Hall. That's not gonna work. Next one.
Not the best use.
Now she's showing you could theoretically do a single court there, but I think we can all agree that's not a good
Would that be
idea.
a historic use of the home?
Then you've got the annex, you know, this is what a single court would occupy a pretty good amount of that floor area, and we're not really looking for a single court. And we're not here tonight to make decisions, I'm just, the DPW water garage, you know, did pencil out at 60 by 60, which I think was, two courts. So, but we know very well there's access issues, elevator, ADA, that would be cost prohibitive. This one here, this is 60 by 120, so that could be 1, 2, 3, 4 courts. In my opinion, a very attractive site, other than the fact that you got a conservation restriction that would need to be modified. And haven't talked to Greenbelt about this, but 5 years ago, when we talked to them about the dog park in this general area, they were very clear that in order to consider modifying it to allow active recreation, which they were considering the dog park to be, they would look for a commensurate amount of other land to be placed under restriction to offset what they would perceive as the loss of conservation land. So there'd be a lot of negotiations, a lot of time. I think in my opinion, it ought to be on the table for consideration, but it may not emerge as the best site for those reasons. This one here, I think this is generally what Chris, you had suggested when we were on site that day. This is 60 by 120, so you could comfortably fit four courts in this location.
Hey, there's parking.
You'd lose some parking, but if the park and rec building gets demoed, that's gonna create some parking, and there's often underutilized.
Well, not like that, because, well, I have an upgraded access eventually, but, you can access that without going onto the school campus and interfering
Right.
with them.
And we did talk with Jonathan Seymour a while back, once Chris had floated this idea. I mentioned like, hey, would that be a concern? He said, as long as it's not interior to the campus, he didn't feel that Pentucket would have any concern about that. Obviously, procedurally, this is subject to the paid school lease, so anything would need to go to school committee. This is just, we're at a very, very, just scratching the surface here, but from an initial at a glance, it looks like it's a location that could work.
But don't the towns own the property around? I don't think the school.
No, it does, actually, the leased area, we had,
That's okay, I just.
yeah, no, so we had, it hadn't, whoops, sorry, anyhow, if you go to the GIS, the leased area, we actually created a data layer for it.
Oh, really? Okay.
We did, yeah, so if you go to my map,
Is it all town lease land?
no, just for that one, in fact, I sent Christian the one for the Society of St. John a couple of weeks ago, and it's on his list, it's not there yet, but I'd
Is
like
that publicly
he's.
available or is that only a staff?
No, it's publicly available, but it's just for, yeah, I mean, the easements layer of my map is woefully deficient. And this isn't an easement, but if you look at, they actually, it was a little wonky how they did it. This was added a while back. They created, I seem to recall, a separate data layer for age school leased area. Yeah, PRSD leased area right here, which I thought was a little weird, create a whole layer, but this is exactly what's appended to the lease. I mean, we approximated it based to create but this is like quite close to, so this is all subject to that lease.
Oh, that's a lot different than I had thought. Okay.
Yeah. And I didn't think a lot of people really knew that, and I was like, let's get it into the GIS.
So I thought it was strict distance around the perimeter of the building.
No,
And
it's,
control everything.
I think there might be, was there like a state requirement or something
that probably is, that you
that-
need a certain amount of
yeah, you need a
acreage
certain
for
amount of-
elementary
of
school.
Acreage to, attend to a school. Maybe,
Yeah,
I'm not
I
sure.
don't know if that
I
was.
think I heard
correct.
somebody say that once, but I don't know that it's true.
So I know it used to be true, because I remember when I was a town planner, we would, me and the planning community would kind of point to the state and say, hey, you're talking about smart growth, but you create these minimum acreage requirements for libraries and schools that disallow putting a library in a town center. I remember in Marshville, we were looking at the state library building program, and the town was like, we'd be better off funding it ourselves, because we'd have to move the library out of the town center, because we can't meet the state's. And I think they've changed that. I think they've changed that since then. This was 20 years ago, but I know they used to
I
have.
guess in our library wouldn't meet that criteria. Of course, we already have it.
Right, yeah, but I know they used to have specific minimum acreage requirements for libraries and schools. So this one, this is Action Cove. This was a concept Brian had. Again, this is just, just from aerial, so it may or may not work out, but that's why you go to the feasibility study to really drill down on that.
Actually, Cove is where they currently are, it's problematic to certain.
Well, but yes,
This is not much.
Does that get the snack shack there?
no, Snack Shack's
Oh,
here,
wait, there, okay.
yeah. So this would be potentially two
What are
courts,
those numbers? I can't read.
60 by 60 roughly.
That's 2 courts.
Obviously you've got a direct a butter and a couple of others who are proximate, so.
All right. They wouldn't have anything to say.
All need to be, this is one that I think is, this batting cage, and we haven't, we haven't talked with, gone through my intent tonight was basically, there's been some brainstorming that's been going on for the last couple of months, and I felt like it'd be good to at least just at a very scratch the surface level, to share with the board.
Christina,
So much
Marshall,
better.
and Brian, went around with a tape measure, just kind of, around town, trying to find places.
I mean, logistically, obviously closer to the senior housing, that's great.
Yeah, I'm told by people who don't play baseball, that this doesn't get a lot of use, obviously. they
Yeah,
like
I
to-
can just imagine when you
No.
raise it though.
Yeah, but is there a scenario where pickleball could go here and those could go, that's all why you do the study, but And then this one didn't make total sense to me, but I did ask Brian about it after I got his markup, but before I'd seen this, to say kind of like, what did he have in mind? And basically what he told me is that this is kind of a little league field, that they don't really use the outfield. This still seems a little tight.
The whole field used to be the softball with the girls. And
Okay.
when they did the field behind Page, they bumped them up there. The signboard still out there that says girls softball.
So that's 360 by 60, so it's.
Yeah, I think it was this or that, was, I think is what she was trying to convey,
The
not all.
bottom one is, that's all wetlands.
Yeah, that looks wet. And it should also be noted that this and this and this are all on land under the care and custody of the Park and Rec Commission, so. And then, of course, you know, this one, I did, Brian definitely feels, and I don't disagree, that this ought to be on the table as an option. Doesn't mean it's the best option, but it ought to be looked at, so. So, you know, I don't know where that, you know, I just wanted to kind of.
Can I throw out the comment?
Yeah.
We previously, and this is months ago, you gave us a list of properties that the town ended up owning through tax takings or whatever it was. There was parcels of land there, not necessarily great locations in town, but could accommodate looking at them on the aerials potentially.
Like Riverview.
Huh?
What's the, is it Rivercrest, Riverview?
River Meadow?
River Meadow, yeah.
I don't remember, there were like 4 or 5 parcels.
There's a parcel there.
Well, it should be explored, is all I'm saying, because there was parcels, one I think out on South Street somewhere, or that vicinity, I recall.
Yeah.
And it was like 4 or 5, just,
Right in the corner.
yeah, I don't know where it, if we're looking at everything.
That would get more use by Newbury residents than West
Probably,
Newbury.
yeah. All right, well, that's.
Good idea,
that's-
sorry.
that's what I had.
So, yeah, I mean, we'll chip away, but, at some point, when there's a little more breathing room, we can figure out, kind of how do we want to approach this process-wise in terms of, engaging, the community and certainly to the extent any land that is not under the board's specific control, namely Park and Rec, or if you wanted to really look at Page School, I think involving the school committee more than just that conversation I had with Jonathan. And certainly, if the Mill Pond pipe stave, that would obviously necessitate a lot of conversations, if you even wanted to go there. I'm not asking you tonight, I just wanted to share some of the spitballing that's going on.
So your feeling is that we don't really need to do a feasibility study, hire somebody else?
I feel like site selection, we could do a lot of that with our own. I think once we have a couple of sites, I think having someone who's, could really like kick the tires, I don't think it needs to cost, as much as the budget. But I think having someone kind of field check it and say, this is what it would take, and maybe there's subsurface utilities, or there's different things that would be good to
It might need to
know.
be designed for permitting.
Yeah,
and then-
right.
But you're thinking.
I do think
build
the
it.
construction, based on this guide that we got, they built the action, they being DPW, built the Action Cove basketball court many years ago. Did a great job with that, with the construction specifications, I think they would want to contract out fencing, maybe placement of the net, I'm not sure, maybe not, but it seems like the subgrade, the paving, I don't know, I think we could do a lot in-house and certainly make the construction costs like quite modest, I would think.
Okay. One thing that sort of threw me is when you started, the conversation on pickleball courts can go basically 2 ways, indoors or outdoors. And it seems like the more appropriate sites are outdoors, so
Yeah,
I don't
I
think people are
definitely
needing
think
this year round, or.
Indoors would be terrific if there was a great site, but I don't think there is.
Well, the cost goes up quite a bit too.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, there isn't an existing indoor site, I don't think.
that's what I meant, that's what I meant, yeah.
So if we have to build a structure, obviously, that's a different ballgame.
Yeah, that's probably a tough sell.
Right, yeah.
All right, let's go back to town manager updates. Water evaluation, you haven't heard back from them, right?
No, so yeah, really nothing new to say there. I did send a note over to Weston and Sampson to see, when we might expect a Hager Richter, report. So once we have something, you guys will be the first to know. Middle Street Bridge, bid opening scheduled for Tuesday. We are working on a second addendum. There were a couple of new questions that came in, since, the addendum we issued earlier this week. So we've been working with, BSC and John, Eric and Wayne and town council on one of the questions. So we're working to get the second addendum finalized and issued tomorrow.
Okay.
So.
All right, how'd the radio meeting go?
No, it was probably the most horrific meeting I've been involved
Are
with.
you kidding?
No.
What happened?
Well, preface that there was, I think I wrote 16 people there, plus or minus. At 2:02, when the meeting starts at 2, I just got a text from the mayor before he would be showing.
That's kind of like the MO.
I have another phrase for it, but I won't say it in the meeting. The conversation bounced around, Maureen gave an update, and there was some back and forth, and the subcommittees all came to the same consensus, we're at a dead end road because of the unanimous vote requirement. So we passed out the letter, and immediately, this is this big round table open at the annex. To my right, Steve Crane from Ipswich and Mr. Georgetown down Orlando. They just basically took the document like this.
Really?
Legislative action's not gonna work. Never even looked at the document, deflected the entire conversation away from it, and wanted to go back to, as Orlando said, well, maybe the state will do a one-time shot in the arm like they did with the original building and give the district the money to build it. So like, the meeting was dysfunctional as heck. I did follow up with a letter to Senator Tar with pretty much the conversation I just spilled out there, throwing people under the bus, but it's all factual. Saying, is this legislative option? The mayor, Orlando said, he had walked through it, the site walk with Senator Tar, and, this will be dead on arrival. And the mayor from Haverhill said she'll kill it instantly. So I wrote to Senator Tar and said, is this legitimate? Are we going down the wrong path, or where do we go from here? So I'm waiting on a response there.
The mayor from Haverhill said that she'd kill
The idea of
But legislative option instantly.
How could she? I mean, if you're just writing the letter.
No.
Yeah.
It can go to the legislature, and doesn't even get entertained, there's a whole process that they have. And she's got the, people that are representing her. In fairness to her, she would oppose it, and her state senator would vigorously try not to get even put on the warrant, I'm sure. But the fact that the committee wouldn't even look at the letter was like, I'm done with the committee. It's just so dysfunctional. They have no focus. It's,
Was Mayor Gove there?
yeah, with her attorney.
And what did the attorney have to say?
I think she was helpful.
She was the best part of the conversation.
Yeah, she was someone with prior experience working with regional agreements. I think had some good kind of reality checks about what's involved with that, but also had some really interesting comments that Chris and I talked after the meeting, and could potentially represent a toehold for something that could break a stalemate. She said a couple of things in the current regional agreement are out of compliance with state law, that there's been state laws adopted since 1967 that this doesn't adhere to, and that the way it's done, in fact, doesn't actually I took probably 12 or 14 pages of handwritten notes, so it's all a little jumbled in my head. I haven't typed them up yet, but I will. And I'll circulate them to the whole group and everything, so we have a record of what was talked about. But I remember she said a couple of specific things, including, I think, the budget process. And there was something else that she said, basically the words in the written agreement aren't how it's done, because that's not in compliance with state law. So Chris and I were talking after the meeting, is there a way to use that as a toehold to say, look, if there's things in the existing regional agreement that are out of compliance with state law and are not in fact what how it's being done, might that be a way to say, you need a new agreement? And the other thing that was
Is there a
brought up,
validity clause in the current agreement that, you know, that essentially says?
like
you
a
know,
severability.
Yeah, severability,
Yeah.
that's what I meant.
I can't recall.
Cause if there's not, then.
Yeah, and well, the other
I'm
thing
not aware,
that,
but,
that's been
yeah.
suggested by a couple of people, both in conversations leading to, and at the meeting, maybe to a lesser extent, but it's been speculated that if Whittier is intending to formalize a partnership with Northern Essex, does that potentially necessitate a new regional agreement? Because that's really a different thing than what was authorized by the legislature in the sixties when it adopted the enabling legislation to create
The whole
Whittier
structure
as a
changes.
district. Is that in fact a new necessitating new agreement? At which point, again, Chris and I were saying, if there's some lawyer who knows what they're talking about, who thinks that and is willing to like say that, write that, could that become a situation where for those who are favorable to the Northern Essex partnership, which I think everyone is, but certainly Haverhill would be, if there's a way to make it that in order to do that, you need a new agreement, like a brand new agreement, that would be a major.
I posed that question to Senator Tar in the letter I sent.
Right.
That was one of the questions.
Yeah, so that's something I think that Mayor Go bringing this attorney who had some knowledge would, you know, I thought that her, the attorney's comments were helpful.
And did she say that at?
No, we didn't get into that, but that's something, you know, I could follow up with Mayor Cove and kind of see if she could get her attorney to really look at that question specifically. Because I think if there is someone who's credible on this stuff, who sees that, who knows if there is, but that would be a big thing.
You see, the big issues in the meeting didn't get addressed, and all the little minutiae was getting addressed. Well, if we could change it to a 2/3 vote, the answer's no, we've been this path 5 times. And so the meat of the issue is, if they do this agreement with Northern Essex, does it require a new regional agreement? It very well could, we don't know. But that,
Another thing that the attorney, whose last name I didn't catch, but her name was Nancy.
nobody gave her the last name, that's why.
That's why.
She was introduced as Nancy.
But one thing that she said that was, I thought pretty interesting was that, and I think she was pretty definitive on this, that she didn't believe that a regional school district would have the right to sell property that's under its control without a special act of the legislature. So if some partnership with Northern Essex, if the end game there is a campus on the Northern Essex campus and they're no longer need, exactly, that they wouldn't have the authority to do that without a special act of the
That makes
legislature.
sense, if
Which-
the legislature.
Right, but it also kind of helps, you know, it sort of leads to this question of, is that underlying regional agreement even still valid? Because it's really just a fundamentally different thing than what was authorized in the 1960s. Different location, different, you know, higher ed partnership, like it's just a different region. Now, could that also create the potential that some number of members of the district could exit potentially, you know?
I think an exit is almost impossible when you read the agreement and.
Under the current agreement.
Yeah, current,
Yeah,
but
but
if there's a new agreement, what?
We're still bound legally to this agreement. Secondly, if you do exit, you've got to be in another regional district.
Right.
For VOTEC somewhere, so you might as well stay here. Even if you exited now, because somebody at one of the Zoom meetings said something, Mayor Barrett said, you have cost. Because you've used the school for 50 years, you've depreciated, well, there's a cost associated with that, you're gonna have to, it's gonna be millions and millions. They think they just get out now before the new school's built, and they wash their hands, no, you're gonna have a huge check.
Another thing that was mentioned on that same topic, which is something that certainly caught our attention, is OPEB. We bear a share of Whittier's OPEB liability.
You'll still own that.
And once that was said, and actually Gove mentioned, when I spoke to her on the phone on Monday, she mentioned that, and I was like, what does Whittier's actuarial report that, you know, we get every year by law, we have to get every year, what does theirs look like, and why like, I'd be interested to see their report, and that, is it allocating this future financial responsibility to the communities, because we're not budgeting an ROPEB, stabilization, we're not accounting for
For your.
OPEB, exactly.
Right.
Theoretically, they are, but we don't know what that is, and if you exit, you still own that obligation.
Right.
So,
Right,
it's, like I said, she's gonna legitimately can sit there and say, okay, the building has $200,000 of value that you depreciate over these years, you still own $30 million of that value. So it's not, you just don't walk out the door and say, it's been nice knowing it, and it's also unanimous vote, again, to approve it, so that's.
to approve that someone actually, yeah,
Right, so the whole conversation, other than Nancy the lawyer,
Yeah.
give them the last name, was the most fractured. They kept going back to trying to manage the insignificant issues that are not going to happen until you can change the voting process. Again, we're in a public meeting. I felt that there had been pressure put on a couple of people at the meeting. And then I do believe that at least one of the towns is in line for MSBA project funding currently that might influence their positions, let's say it nicely like that.
So is Mayor Gove like engaged with this and on board with your thinking and?
And I think she would be. One thing I'm gonna do, I actually meant to do it, either yesterday or today, and it's been so busy, but I will, is send a letter around by email to everyone who was there, thank them for their participation, and ask them specifically to bring the draft letter to their respective chief elected bodies, so whether select boards or city councils. Cause even though it seemed like some of the, chief executives, namely Ipswich and Georgetown seemed pretty down on the idea, they're not the decision makers, they oughta, if I specifically say, hey, bring this to your board, presumably it'll show up at a future Ipswich select board meeting, and maybe they won't be on board with it, but maybe they will. So we definitely, we don't wanna take the, tepid reception at the meeting as definitive. So we will send that letter around and specifically ask people to bring it.
Like I said, those two towns engaged, Mayor Gove did a little, it was surprising, stunning how quiet the rest of the people were.
Rowley spoke up quite a bit.
Yes.
And what were their thoughts?
Irritation at the highest level.
Yeah.
But yes, we'll be with it too.
And that was the select board member, not the town administrator.
Yeah, he was the one that stood up at the meeting.
Yeah, he's been very vocal and opposed it all Whittier. Yeah.
So his response though to your letter was,
Oh, I think he'd be favorable.
Oh,
about
I
that.
talked to him, he'd be very favorable.
Yeah, I think some number of communities would definitely, and I wouldn't rule out that it could be a majority, even though, in the moment it wasn't.
They were intimidated not to speak up at that meeting by the response. I mean, it was dismissive instantly.
Because they thought it was wrong or because they didn't think it would work?
It won't fly through legislature.
Yeah, they didn't think it would work, yeah.
Even though Senator Tar.
I
especially-
stated it straight out to him. This was not mine. This was Senator Tar saying this is how the process should go
Okay.
forward.
All right,
And they basically diminished both he and myself with their comments on it. So
sorry to
I
hear that,
think
Chris.
Senator Tar is a pretty bright fellow, and it's probably not a high odds-on favorite of making it there, but if you don't try, you're never gonna know.
Right. In terms of, the public listening sessions, did everyone get those emails with a clickable link?
Yeah,
So if you're interested, definitely anyone who would like to. That's something Maureen did say at the meeting, Maureen Lynch, that, MSBA is watching their public process very, very, very closely. And is very, is looking for some indication that this regional agreement can be worked out. And obviously, based on the meeting on Tuesday, there's no path. There is no path. So I don't know how they're gonna.
so do you think
Make
MSBA
that
is not
work.
gonna be supportive with regional?
I think they're gonna be very skeptical, because part of what a lot of us are saying is, even if you're supportive of a new project, even if everybody at that room, which was not the case, but even if everyone in that room was like, hey, we're all for it, they're not the voters, like, it's got to pass at a ballot in a couple of years. And if it's, and I think everyone feels if it's brought to a ballot without changes to the regional agreement, either concurrent or preceding that, the odds of something having a different outcome seem very slim. So I think MSBA is gonna
Well,
be reluctant to, you know, they don't want to back a project that doesn't have a good probability to pass.
Right, they put a lot into it.
this is the project that also has been given the unique ability to cut the line.
Right, exactly, yeah, I was shocked.
Well, Senator Tarr mentioned that, and that's why they're on very thin ice with MSBA, because it's a unique situation they're trying to help on. And without the support, it does become very perilous.
It's funny, Haverhill may be really shooting themselves in the foot. Because nothing may fly if MSBA doesn't.
At some point, the state would have to step in and
Yeah.
take over the process. I don't know what that looks like either.
I'm sorry, but,
Time out.
yeah.
Those are counterproductive issues there, Rick. Those are counterproductive.
Oh, well, I gave blood today, so we gotta keep, gotta stay hydrated.
I didn't give blood, but I feel like I've had a lot sucked out of me lately. Executive session, like it take about 5 minutes.
Actually, you might be more right than you realize.
Did you get a response from Ken?
On both or one?
Just the one.
Okay.
The others next week.
Oh. Wow. Cool.
So his response is in response to you saying we need to bring it to the board?
No, it went to a vote.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I don't know about, yes, we'll talk later.
Right, page school to read.
So I wasn't part of the meeting on Tuesday because I was at a very compelling Whittier Tech meeting. But Sam gave us a briefing the next day. He was there, I believe Brian was there, Jonathan. And I think everyone was very pleased with the, you know, the structural engineer under contract. Sam gave me a bunch of little factoids, but I don't really trust my memory to get into those. The structural engineer is gonna write up a report, and at that point, you know, obviously you guys will see that, but you know, Sam did suggest that he thinks it's basically there's things that are gonna be recommended to make it safe. And that they think it's gonna end up with a recommendation to make that an emergency egress only. But there's a lot of details that we'll see when we get the report, but that's underway. The next item, when I put this on the agenda, or asked Wendy to put it on the agenda, I thought I'd be able to go into some detail, and then I read that comment more closely, and I decided to pull everything out. So, you know, me and Christine Clay are all part of that review. We did have a meeting Monday. I think it's very promising, the direction it's going, but beyond that, I think I'll leave it at that.
All right. 113.
So we firmed up November 14th as a date for a major public meeting. We've got a lot of work to do on promoting that and really kind of defining that. A big part of the objective in a nutshell will be, we want to make sure that everyone ideally everyone in town, but certainly everyone with property fronting on 113 is aware there is a corridor study going on. A lot of people do know that, but I'm sure many don't. And so we want to bring a lot of visibility to it. We want to help share with the broader public. Nothing hasn't been shared before, but that not everyone may have, been at the meetings, that there's going to be a lot of choices to be made in terms of relative urgency, relative importance of different potential infrastructure improvements, whether that's crossings or sidewalks. It's not all going to happen at once. It's not all going to be paid by the state and feds. So to help get some really good public input to the decisions this board will ultimately be charged with making in terms of what's the relative importance, relative urgency of the varying kind of sub-projects along the corridor. We did have a kickoff meeting on Monday for the middle high school. That was really good. It's myself, Butch, Christine. We had obviously a consultant there. Jonathan was there, and a couple of people from MVPC, Chief Dwyer, and we spent probably about an hour and a half walking the whole study area. There are some clear deficiencies that are evident, some things that are relatively simple that could be fixed with signage or either additional or relocating signage, but the fact that there being still 3 crosswalks, the new one, and then there's vestiges of the 2 older ones, that's not the end game. The end game we think is going to be 2 crosswalks. So, with presumably the new one and the one down by Nick's being the 2 that would end up being kind of sanctioned as crosswalks. For the one in front of Nick's to be recognized as a crosswalk, it would need to have a compliant landing area on the north side. That would entail connecting that to presumably the sidewalk of the driveway to the school. So, it's a conceptual planning exercise. So this will lead to some concept plans that we can bring forward at a future meeting for review. After the kind of formal part of the visit finished, Butch and Christine and I stopped into Nick's Pizza, had a really nice conversation with the manager there. We wanted to make sure they were aware of what we're looking at, why we're looking at it. We talked with them about MVPC and about NEBA and the bus route and the potential interest in having a formal bus stop in front of their shop. They thought was great. They shared with us some of the concerns they've had about lighting in the area, about the kind of lack of sanctioned or safe crossing, and they said they see a lot of kids jumping the fence and crossing, which is what we would have expected to see. During the formal site visit, Jonathan said that doesn't happen much, but the manager, Nick, said it happens all the time. So it was really good. I think it was, it advanced the kind of public process. They're obviously going to be a really important player in this. They also shared with us some thoughts they have about potentially wanting to have more formalized outdoor seating, which that's all going to need to be in coordination with this. And our consultant, told us that if they were doing that, because of course we met with a group, then we met with them, but he had said if they are looking to do that, which we already knew they were, that's going to require DOT approval, which they probably don't know. So anyhow, it was good. It was a good kickoff. And we're glad that's underway. We're certainly appreciative of the state earmark that's funding that work. The Vision Zero, we submitted our comments. I don't know that we want to, how far we want to go with this. I mean, I was definitely unimpressed by the report. And some of the things they had identified as West Newbury's projects were like, where did these come from? Like we didn't even, look at a map to like, what's that even in West Newbury? So, but we did, ask the MPO through MVPC to pump the brakes, and they did. I got an email from Gerard, basically saying that they would. Actually, I'm not gonna. Actually, it was from Patrick Reed. Gerard emailed me but then it was Patrick who, he said, we presented the town's comments, to the MVPO board. They agreed to extend the review period for the Vision Zero plan for an additional 21 days. There are some, it goes on in some depth to, there's some time sensitivity because there's some federal grant funding that it'll be helpful to Haverhill and possibly other communities in the region to have this approved by a certain date so they can go ahead and apply for grants so they have their eye on. So I can forward this, I don't think yeah, no, I did. I forwarded it to you guys last night. But you know, we'd like to make sure that what they're including in their report reflects our sense of local priorities.
Yeah.
But what I took from Patrick's email was their methodology is really based on crash data and specifically crashes with injury or loss of life, not property damage. So they've got a very kind of specific methodology that contributes to how they list projects. So I don't know that we want to put in all, like, there's no harm in it. Like having a project, one of our projects in there will help us potentially for some future grant and possibly even expand our eligibility for something like, you know, what I'm seeing, these raise grants, these state, their federal grant that April's looking at. So I don't think we need to like belabor it, but we did kind of want to make the point that like, we got this thing with like no time and to review and no time for this board to review, and you guys are the highway commissioners, so. You know, we would, but so they the MPO met yesterday and they extended the comment period by 21 days, so. I don't know if we want to have that back on in 2 weeks to just say this would be our list of priorities.
All right. So we should.
It may not change anything, because if their listing is just based on crash data anyway, and specifically with injury. So I don't want to like belabor it any too much further, but
Okay.
we felt that we ought to be given a little more time to respond, so we have been given that time. Next item, just a quick acknowledgement. We are underway with the data collection on the fiscal impact for the MBTA communities. Most of that is school data, so I've been in touch with the business manager of Kentucky, and she's working to provide the projections and some other information, and Jen Geary is helping me with that as well, because part of what the consultant's going to be looking for is any kind of local data on school age children per types of development. So whether that's townhouse with like Drake's Landing or Fallensby, or whether that's single family, if we can isolate specific areas and determine exactly how many kids are coming from that, that gives them some locally accurate data that makes their analysis, you know, as good as can be. So we're working on that. The other piece they've asked as part of the data collection, which isn't something we, you know, could provide right away, but it is something we're on track to do. This ties into the free cash transfer discussion a bit, is they've asked us for budget trends and projections by department, which of course, as of today, we don't have, but we have made some real progress in the last couple of weeks with corresponding with Division of Local Services at Department of Revenue, and they're actually updating the financial forecast model that was done in 2018. We've provided them all of the last 5 years' data, and they are actually going to be updating that with the data we provided, which is great. So that's going to take a little while, but I think that'll be done by I don't know if it'll be a matter of a couple of weeks or a month or two, but it's going to be done. It's not going to be 6 months. So that'll give us a level of projections on future, budget that we don't have today that will help the free cash discussion, but also will give us the data that the fiscal impact consultants asked us for.
Mhm. Right. Any other items that want to include there?
Nothing specific.
So should we jump to traffic rules? And orders, Rich's comments on that?
When we put this together, I knew Dwyer and Butch would be here. I didn't know how, the meeting was gonna be so they're not here. I can tell you, I talked to both of them and they would both, and this is not on for your action, it's just an update, but they would both be comfortable on the farm lane request with allowance for parking on the non-school side, as long as it's not during snow emergencies. So,
So
which
that's not what
obviously,
the memo said.
I know,
Okay.
I know, yeah.
Say that again?
Butch is
Memo
not, yeah,
said
that's not what the
no
memo
parking
says.
inside.
Right, yeah, but when we were out on site the other day, Butch and I talked it over and because the way he writes it, he's really talking about snow removal. So I reminded him, like, we already have a parking ban for public
Mhm.
streets from, I think it's October to April, whatever the dates are. So, if there's not a snow condition, even though, he's correct that it's a narrower road, and if someone's parked, someone's gonna need to go into the, to go around during normal conditions, that's not gonna be, it's a low traffic road and, but yeah, I would rather him and Dwyer be here for that
Okay.
discussion, so. But I did say to both of them, can I quote you on that? And they said yes, so.
All right, so is that the only change in there?
I think, there was the other ones in that immediate vicinity, is it Chestnut?
Chestnut?
Yeah, someone said something to me about Chestnut and I can't remember what it was.
Okay.
Maybe we'll leave that on for.
Yeah, it's interesting. I drove up there recently and, so there's Chestnut. And then you take a left into that Chestnut Hill, maybe.
Yeah, Chestnut Hill Street.
Yeah, and that street is actually seems to be exceptionally wide.
Well, again, the signs were there originally when the high school.
Yeah.
didn't have sufficient parking, so.
Right, no, I get that. It was just an observation that it seemed wider than most streets. Certainly, secondary streets like
Yeah,
that.
Where is Winfield Crossing? Do you know?
Yeah, that's the office building, right,
right, side of town.
in the center of town.
Okay,
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
so, on item C, the conservation plan, I told Angus I didn't think we needed to weigh in on that or
Thank
be
you.
part of their review. I mean, I feel like, Conservation Commission is doing their job. and-
We did our job at the front end of
Right,
that.
okay. Just
I
wanna-
I wanted to share it just because the day will come that you'll be asked to sign the CR and so, but yeah, we're both in agreement that we don't need too many cooks in the kitchen.
Yeah, okay,
Especially given how hands-on this board was with the CR language.
yeah. All right, any questions on the correspondence? Verizon cable and DPU. All right. Now we adjourn to, no.
Any follow-up from the chairs meeting or is that?
No, I didn't get any written follow-up. The planning board had a meeting and Ray actually took the slides and gave the planning board kind of a mini demo of what we did. And his only comment was he thought we should have organic farming. Something to promote organic farming. So,
That was Ray's comment?
yes,
Okay.
and which he did provide to the right to, in response to the right to farm bylaw. Yeah, was not taken up.
As opposed to allowing any insecticides or pesticides. Yeah.
As long as it's standard agricultural practice.
Right.
Okay,
Make a motion to recess to executive session.
in favor?
Well, I have to state the issue.